break into your house. That day, Olivia was home alone. She was lying on her bed and texting with Alex, just a random guy she met online recently. Mom called and told her to check the doors carefully before going to bed. Mom was right to be worried. In the past few days, there had been people disguised as creepy clowns wandering off the streets. But anyway, those cases were reported from South Carolina, while Olivia's house was in Illinois. Those idiot clowns would never come to this neighborhood.
Don't forget to double-check the window. Mom, I got it. I'm 17. I'm not a child anymore.
Olivia was a little annoyed because her mother kept treating her like a child. After a few minutes, she hung up the phone. Just as Olivia was about to return to her room, there was a sudden knock on the front door.
Who could be here at this time? Ugh, so annoying.
She mumbled while getting to the door, but when she looked through the peephole on the door, there was no one outside. It must be the bratty kid Tony next door with his new trick, she thought, and walked up the stairs. Then came the knock again, and this time it made Olivia really angry. She crept to the door, preparing to swing it open and scold the boy. But when she looked through the peephole again, Olivia jumped in fear. On the outside, there was a wide-open, bloodshot eye. It was so close to the peephole. There was no kid outside, but a man in a clown costume. He was staring at the peephole at the same time Olivia was. And not only did he stare in, but he was also grinning weirdly, waving his hand and banging on the door repeatedly. After a while, the breaking in failed, and he suddenly left the house. Thinking he had given up, Olivia breathed a sigh of relief. But just a few seconds later, she saw his shadow flickering through the window. He was heading towards the kitchen. He repeatedly turned the doorknob, but still could not get in. He didn't stop, but continued to walk towards the back door. Oh my God! Olivia couldn't remember whether she locked the back door or not. Frightened and trembling, Olivia ran upstairs looking for somewhere to hide. She didn't dare get near any door because the clown was out there and he might catch her. No room seemed safe enough, she thought, her hands shaking as she dialed the phone. But damn, it already ran out of battery power. Olivia burst into tears. She had never felt so scared and helpless. Now that the clown got into the house, she could clearly hear his footsteps from downstairs. The clown was holding a knife in his hand, walking around slowly in the living room. He had just whistled, echoing through the quiet house, scaring Olivia even more. Something had fallen to the ground. Olivia covered her mouth not to make a peep. She was afraid to death. The clown slowly walked along the hallway, opening every door he passed. And then he suddenly sped up toward the stairs, coming up with sick and twisted ideas. Deadly silence. Olivia could no longer hear anything but the sound of her heart pounding wildly. She was about to open the door, but the footsteps came again. Now he was right in front of Olivia's room and opened the door. The half-open wardrobe caught his attention. He gave a wry smile and crept over. He opened the wardrobe, but there was no one inside. Olivia was under the bed. She didn't dare to even breathe heavily, only focused on his feet moving around. The clown was so close, step by step. He walked towards the bed where the panicking girl was hiding. Her whole body was petrified, so much that she couldn't even move an inch. Until the police cordoned off the entire house and found Olivia shivering under the bed, still alive. The clown had run away, and the police never found him. Olivia's mom was the one to dial 911 right after she checked the security camera and
The city that never sleeps is probably just too afraid to close its eyes. The House of Death, a famous brownstone off Fifth Avenue, is reportedly terrorized by a whopping 22 ghosts. Shockingly, it became the crime scene of the latest case. As reported, the victims were a man and a girl, believed to be dad and daughter.
Woohoo! Guys, we found our next destination. Here we go, New York City! Phew! Hello, everyone. It's Ben again. The flight to New York was delayed by 2 hours. Anyways, let me show you House of Death, one of the most famous haunted houses in America. Okay, see you guys inside.
Working as a TikTok streamer is not as fun as I expected. I've created content inspired by haunted places, which was supposed to be viral. However, a few months have passed and my channel still only has 1,000 followers. House of Death, please make me shine. I dragged my suitcase inside the house. My plan is to spend the night here.
Okay, guys, I'm in. As you can see, there's dust everywhere. I guess this place was abandoned for a while. I don't know why, but this place gives me chills.
Then, I headed to a room, which appeared to be a bedroom, to set up the lights for tonight's stream. Jesus, this house isn't as scary as it's described on the TV. In this case, I guess I have to use that trick.
Oh, I guess we've got enough people here. Make sure you turn the light off to get the show started. Right. The most recent case happened 10 years ago, but the news actually covered a part of it. I've asked around, and it turns out before the murder happened, a family used to live here. 3 people, in fact. Yes, the news never mentioned the mother, right? From what I heard from the neighbors, that night, they heard the sound of a man screaming. The father? Yes. And then the little girl. Police searched everywhere, but the mother was never found. And the murder weapon was an ice pick. So sure enough, I think the mother murdered her husband and daughter, then killed herself somewhere.
The comment section started to get lively.
Why? Today, we will find out why she did what she did.
Then, more and more commenting. I thought it was because they were excited, but I was wrong.
Guys, you know I'm not scared of this stuff, right?
Just then, a sudden sound in the doorway startled me. It's like something falling to the floor.
Who's that?
I turned around to see no one, so I left my chair and got to the doorway.
Guys, you won't believe what I just found.
I tremblingly showed them what I had just picked up in the hallway. The ice pick.
Okay, guys, it's time we cleared things up.
While everyone was commenting on the ice pick, I set up my tools on the table.
All you need is paper, 2 candles, a lighter, a needle, and a bit of blood from the person who's communicating with ghosts.
I poked my thumb with a needle and squeezed it to get the blood out. Then, I put 2 straight red dots on the A4 paper. Below each dot, I wrote yes, no in red. Next, place 2 candles on top of the 2 dots and light the fire.
I haven't tried this yet, so I don't know how effective it is. But now we'll start the summoning, shall we?
The number of viewers is increasing, as well as my heart rate is increasing.
Spirit? Spirit? Come here. Spirit? Spirit? Are you here?
The screen is flooded with comments. Is there someone behind? I turned around, but there was no sign of anyone.
You guys almost got me.
I don't pay attention to the comments anymore and continue to summon the ghost.
Spirit? 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 Are you here? Oh my god. Did you see that? The yes candle just flickered. This is really happening.
Okay, I have to stay calm and ask questions.
Spirit? You used to live here, right? Spirit, you're 20 years older, right?
So maybe I'm talking to the murdered daughter. I'll keep asking the question.
Spirit, were you murdered in this house? Guys, I've got goosebumps, but I still have to ask the important question. Spirit, you were murdered by your mother, right? So, yeah, I'm talking to that little girl. Now we're going to find out why the mother did it. But first, Spirit, besides you, is there anyone else in this house? And that is your mother? It's her! She's in this house!
Suddenly, the light flickered like crazy. Jesus, this damn house gave me a stroke of fear. But in return, the number of viewers is higher than ever.
What's wrong with everyone? Stop teasing me. There's no one behind. Okay, I'll go check. Wait for 10 seconds. Don't leave the screen. I got you! So this is a prank as a special gift to 1K followers. Thank you all for supporting me the whole time.
I turned to Jane, who was also laughing. Wow, she's such a shameless makeup witch. Even though I knew it was all fake, her makeup was so scary that I didn't dare look her straight in the eye.
Come on, Ben. You have to get used to this. Don't forget to pay me as you promised.
I couldn't focus on Jane's words. All I notice now is the empty table.
Jane, did you hide the ice pick? I've just left it right here.
Jane looked at me bewildered. Just then, her face turned painful. Blood splashed everywhere. Oh my God! Her eye was stabbed by an ice pick from behind. I have to get out of here. Right now!
Receiving calls from viewers of a TikTok streaming video, the police rushed to the crime scene, known as House of Death. All they found is a corpse of a girl. She was stabbed in the eye and died of blood loss. Currently, the TikToker Benjamin is still missing. The police will continue to investigate.
Spirit, is your mother still alive?
Passed away when I was a child. As a teen, I used to stay up way past midnight every night, watching terrifying videos on YouTube. My mom had always emphasized the importance of sleeping well to me and would definitely disapprove of my late-night routine. So I knew that if she caught me at that time, I'd be in big trouble. When I was 16 years old, my peaceful town was in turmoil as some children were suddenly disappearing. But you know, in the countryside, it's normal for kids like us to run away from home for a few days. Facing this news, my mum even grew more and more paranoid. Every night, I'd hear one of them wandering into my room, checking on me. And every night, she always checked on my brother, Daniel, first, and then came to my room. Even though she tried to walk softly, I could hear her footsteps. I'd immediately turn off my light and pretend to be asleep. I heard the door open, and my mother's tiptoe stepped into the room. I wondered if she knew I wasn't sleeping, because often it was only after what seemed like hours before they'd finally leave. The 16-year-old me felt my privacy was violated. However, I didn't dare cough a word because that only confirmed her suspicions. It was Saturday night. My mom got the news that my grandmother had been sent to the emergency room, so she had to leave home that night. Before heading off, she gave me a stern word reminding me to lock the doors and take good care of Daniel, who was so scared of ghosts at that time. She told me she'd be watching through the security cameras to make sure I'd follow that properly. To be honest, I was quite glad that I had the whole evening to watch horror movies. My mother had just left, so I called my friend to bring me the movie, Silence of the Lambs, to watch. A few minutes later, my friend arrived, holding the DVD in hand. I was extremely excited and hurriedly turned on the TV to watch. Meanwhile, my brother Daniel sat next to me coloring. Now it's 10 o'clock. I urged Daniel to go to bed. It took me half an hour to settle him down. I gently closed the door and went to the living room to finish the movie. I couldn't have my mom knowing that I was staying up late, so I did something naive and ignorant, something I'll always regret. I turned off the security cameras. For the next 2 hours, my eyes never strayed from the screen. It was late at night, and the movie gave me goosebumps. Sometimes I feel like someone is standing behind me, but I know it's all made up in my head. Around 12 o'clock, I suddenly heard the door creak from Daniel's room. Maybe my brother got up to drink water. For a while, still not leaving the screen, I called out, "Daniel, are you not asleep yet?" No one answered. Feeling strange, I went to Daniel's room to check. The door was still closing. "Daniel?" I whispered. He didn't reply, but I could see him under the cover. I went back to the living room to finish watching the movie. It was about to reach the climax of the movie when suddenly I felt a strong wind blowing from nowhere. I glanced quickly toward the corner of the room. The main door was unlocked. The strong wind blew it open. Oh my God! This is bad! This is so bad! Could it be? Having a bad feeling, I grabbed the baseball bat and crept up to Daniel's bedroom. "Daniel, are you asleep?" Usually this noise would have woken him up. I knew something was wrong. I turned the blanket over to check. What? Lying in the blanket was not Daniel, but a strange man I had never seen before. He was pale, and his eyes were bloodshot and had huge gaping fangs under them. While I was still motionless in fear, he grabbed my hand and squeezed it. Shocked and panicked, I smacked him on his disgusting face with my baseball bat. I hit him so hard that blood splattered my face, and eventually he had to let go of me. I rushed to my bedroom, locked the door, and called the police. I was so worried about Daniel. I hadn't seen him ever since. Had he been kidnapped? No, I don't want to think about it. My poor Daniel. A few minutes later, the police arrived, and my mother was home shortly after. The stranger was nowhere to be found. All they found were bloodstains on the bed, and Daniel, my dear brother, shivering in the closet. He must have been like me, pretending to be asleep and hiding in the closet as soon as he heard a strange noise at the door. And since I turned off the camera, the police never found him. A few months later, when things had calmed down, I joked with my mother, "I see why you're so worried that you have to check my room every night." My mother looked at me with concern. "What do you mean? I never checked your room after you slept."
Omegle, but I can't skip anyone challenge? Sounds hot. A YouTube recommendation made me so curious about this new trend on Omegle. After a few seconds of hesitating, okay, maybe I should give it a try. The rule of the game was very simple. In any random chance, I can't be the one who presses the skip button. Okay, let's get started. I clicked video. The conversations were boring, but I couldn't skip them. Hell yeah. No matter how weird the stranger was, I couldn't skip. If you don't want to talk, you can skip me, I told him after we connected for 1 minute. Faster than I expected. That guy raised his middle finger, then quit right away. What the hell? I frowned at his rude attitude. The next one, well, she was really a pretty girl.
Hi.
She started first. Hi, I replied with a gentle smile. We just talked about some trends on social media recently. Good news. We seemed to get along quite well. The conversation was fun, and there was no sign of wanting to skip each other. Hey, do you want to play a game? I suggested playing Truth or Dare, and she said yes. On her first turn, she hit the truth. I was excitedly waiting for a secret to be revealed.
Okay. A fact about me. I killed someone.
What? I was surprised.
Yes, I killed a person.
She confirmed. And even though I told her to stop, she kept recounting every detail of the murder. I couldn't skip first, and Omegle didn't have a mute mode, so all I could do was listen politely. She said that she met the victim on the street. Then she followed her home and strangled her to death. But it didn't end there. She also chopped up the body, removed the organs, and threw them away.
It'll take the police weeks or even months to find the body.
She laughed like a psycho. My God, I'd never seen such a freaky girl. Her face turned cold when she talked about those bloody crimes. Hey, it's just a joke, isn't it? I had to chill down my spine but still tried to keep my voice calm. The Omegle challenge wasn't over yet, and I didn't want to fail like this.
Joke? Do I look like joking?
That was enough. I couldn't stand this creep. I clicked on the skip button. Well, looks like I've just lost this challenge, I said to the camera and then stopped recording. After that, I did some editing to the recording, then posted on my YouTube channel with the title, Omegle But I Can't Skip Anyone. The video included the weird conversation with that insane girl. After uploading, I went to bed and surfed TikTok for a while before falling asleep. A phone call woke me up at night. It was my friend Roger, and he sounded very serious.
Check your YouTube channel right now.
I quickly opened my phone to see what happened. OMG! I was surprised to see that my Omegle video had reached 500,000 views in just a few hours of posting. It's unbelievable, I told Roger.
Dude, read the comments.
Roger replied. I was completely shocked when I scrolled down to the comments section below. The girl in the last video is dead. Many comments told me that the girl I talked to on Omegle was dead. Police discovered that she was dismembered and her body parts were thrown everywhere, exactly like what she described to me in the video before. One comment criticized me that I had no shame in making a joke about death. But that wasn't a joke. I did talk to that girl. She probably is a ghost. A comment popped up. I was so confused. I didn't realize what was really going on. Everything was getting worse. I locked the comments section.
I don't know, Roger. I swear, I talked to her for real.
I screamed on the phone.
So you actually talked to a ghost?
I don't know. She was so real. It couldn't be fake. I replied to Roger while scrolling through the article about her case. That girl was indeed dead, and her body was found 2 days ago. This was nonsense. Although I confirmed that I did not fake the video, they didn't believe me. After that, because there were so many conflicting opinions, I had to delete the video. A few days later, the police came to find me. I was extremely scared at the time, but I honestly reported and handed over the video of the conversation as evidence to the police. Finally, the mystery was solved. It turns out that the girl on Omegle was actually killed. But the murderer, after killing her, used a software called Deepfake to pretend to be that girl and used it to spread around about his exploits. Fortunately, Dan has been a big fan of Chuck E. Cheese ever since he was a child. He often watched horror stories on YouTube about Chuck E. Cheese chain stores. Sometimes those stories were told to be based on a true story. And of course, he was always curious to find out if those stories were true.
It's nice to be here late at night. When the machines are down and families are gone, you can get a Chuck E. Cheese token.
Dan stood in front of Chuck E. Cheese restaurant, looking at his phone with anticipation. He looked around carefully while forming in his head a plan to sneak in there at 3 a.m. In the YouTube video he was watching, there was a reference to the Chuck E. Cheese token. The video owner claimed that he found it in the management room thanks to an animatronic. So the plan was set. He must find an animatronic. After a while, Dan got to a dark hallway. He suddenly felt like someone was watching from behind. Turning around, Dan was startled to see the Chuck E. Cheese mascot standing there. It looked old and very strange with its round, fat body and dirty fur. Thinking it was the restaurant's staff, Dan cautiously took a step back. The mascot also stepped toward him without saying a word.
So weird,
Dan thought as he squinted at the moving creature. His heart was beating fast, and his mind was trying to come up with as many excuses as possible, just in case they caught him. And then, the mascot suddenly reached out with its hand toward Dan. Dan reflexively put his hand forward in self-defense, but the mascot had no intention of harming. Dan looked closely into the mascot's hand to see a red hard card with the Chuck E. Cheese logo in there. His eyes widened in surprise.
Don't play at the machines until after dark. Although it's definitely more fun at night, when everybody is already sleeping at home at 3 a.m.
It was true. The rumor in the videos was true. Dan looked at the card in the mascot's hand and took it after a moment's hesitation. Then, with great joy, he thanked the mascot and quickly left. Now Dan was standing in the front of the entrance and trying to figure out how to get in. His watch pointed exactly at 3 o'clock. The door suddenly opened, and the mascot, Chuck E. Cheese, appeared and waved for Dan to come in. He was so jittery, but decided to step inside. The inside of the store was pitch black. All the gaming machines were off.
Now then, how to start?
But the mascot disappeared before Dan finished his sentence. Dan felt a little scared, but he couldn't quit here. He turned on the flashlight and continued to go deeper. After he took a few more steps, suddenly the screen at the stage lit up to guide the way. His heart was pumping so fast. Finally, it was time to lift the veil about all of this mysterious stuff. He followed the instructions and reached the corridor shortly thereafter. At the end of the hallway was a huge door with a magnetic lock. Dan took out the red card previously given to him by the mascot and swiped it. The door opened.
Yes!
When he stepped through the door, a horrible odor broke out, causing Dan to immediately cover his nose. It was a large room full of gaming machines like the store outside. Those machines looked old with patchy stains and rust, but seemed to work fine. A faint whisper from the darkness startled Dan. He followed the sound. The nearer he got, the clearer the sound was. And when the 4 mascots appeared in the dark corner of the room, Dan was completely petrified. They looked very monstrous and creepy. On the costumes crisscrossed with stitches, the fur was thick, dirty, and messy. There were patches of exposed skin.
Please, help us.
Oh my God! They were all humans! And those were not normal mascot costumes, but real human skin. Someone had sewn patches of skin and fur on those bodies to make them the living mascots.
Let's butter up the pizza with a special butter sauce.
Dan felt a quiver down his spine. When he turned around, Charles the mascot came with a sharp knife in his hand. Dan fortunately dodged the slashes of the knife, but still suffered an injury to his hand. The mascot kept swinging the knife. Panicked, Dan rushed towards the door with all his strength before getting stabbed with the knife. He rushed out of the restaurant, heading forward without looking back. Luckily, he reached the police station before losing consciousness from blood loss. According to Dan's testimony, the police came to investigate the scene. They found the secret chamber and the victims that were turned into mascots. They were the investors who planned to replace the restaurant with a big hotel. The owner was arrested after that. He was the one that wore the mascot. He loved the restaurant insanely. The owner decided to kidnap and punish the investors after they threatened to destroy his restaurant. And of course, he was also the mastermind of the horror story in Chuck E. Cheese 3 a.m. In this story was put in the same situation, and even though she's a grown-up now, she still remembers what happened that day. 14 years ago, on a sunny Sunday afternoon, Sophia and her mother went to Walmart for some groceries. Since Sophia had done a good job helping her mom with housework, as a reward, Mom would buy her a Barbie school bag. Sophia was so excited that she kept singing until they'd arrived at the parking lot. She was happy every time going to the supermarket. It was time to run and juggle along hundreds of parallel aisles.
Sweetie, you shouldn't be running around like that.
Zoe reminded her daughter before giving her the bag she always wanted.
Thank you, Mommy.
The little girl hugged her mother.
Darling, now go to the play area and stay there while I go buy some fruit, all right?
Zoe led Sophia to the play area.
Remember, just stay here. I'll be right back, all right?
And so there was only happy Sophia left among hundreds of toys of all kinds. While Sophia was looking around, a stranger quietly approached her. "Hello, little friend."
Hi.
Sophia was startled, but still replied in a friendly manner. "Where's your mommy?" Sophia didn't answer, but pointed towards the fruit counter. "So, you're here alone?" This man's voice and appearance started to make her stomach turn. Mom always said to never talk to strangers, so she wouldn't say any other words. "Aw, I'm so sad because I don't have any friends." Sophia suddenly felt pity for him.
Don't cry. I get it.
Sophia gave the man a candy to comfort him. "Ah, thank you, little friend."
Sophia!
Zoe called out her daughter's name.
I'm here, Mommy.
Seeing that the kid was all right, Zoe turned away, continuing to talk on the phone with customers. When Sophia turned back, the man had already disappeared. The man wasn't really leaving, he was observing. Now he was quite sure that the mother wouldn't be back right away, so he returned to Sophia. Hey, little friend.
Oh, hi.
Thanks for the candy.
You're welcome.
Hey, little friend, I have something for you. This is a thank you gift. Sophia looked at the beautiful doll with amusement.
So pretty.
She marveled while stroking the doll. Suddenly, she was gone.
Sophia?
Zoe returned and her daughter had already disappeared.
Sophia!
There was no answer. Feeling that something bad might have happened, she panicked and ran out to find her child.
Sophia!
It were as though she vanished.
Oh my God! Sophia! Where are you?
Zoe went from one toy aisle to another, but couldn't see any kids that looked like hers. She started to regret leaving her daughter alone. As soon as she reached the doll stall, Zoe paused. Wasn't that the backpack that Sophia was wearing before? She ran around to ask for help.
Please help me. My daughter is missing.
Most people just ignored her because they didn't know what was going on. Finally, there was a Walmart security guard standing nearby.
Excuse me. My daughter is lost. Please help me.
She cried.
Please, calm down. I will immediately call the security center to find her,
the guard said.
Sophia!
Zoe immediately ran like crazy to where she heard her daughter. It seemed that Zoe's cries and Sophia's struggle worked. The man dropped the girl and ran away. Sophia ran towards her mother. Zoe immediately hugged her daughter and couldn't help crying.
I'm scared.
As soon as she met her mother, Sophia quickly hugged her neck.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, honey.
The man was quickly arrested. The incident stirred the media for a while and became a warning for mothers not to let their children play in supermarkets or shopping centers by themselves.
Sweetie, I'm sorry. From now on, I will never ever let you out of my sight.
My girlfriend, Rosamund, was an Instagram influencer famous for her vegetarian lifestyle. To me, her eating habit was way annoying, especially when we hung out together. For example, while all I wanted was a quick meal at McDonald's, Rosamund was the opposite. She really hated it when I munched a burger. On one of our dates, we decided to go shopping, then eat out at noon. On the long street, we couldn't find any other restaurants other than McDonald's.
No, not again.
Rosamund shook her head. Come on, Rosie. I'm so hungry. You don't love me anymore, huh? I insisted. After a while, she eventually reluctantly followed me to my heaven of fast food. Rosamund seemed so disturbed at the menu.
Looks like I have to starve myself again.
She got angry because there were no vegan dishes. She left me at the counter and stormed to the booth. So I ordered my usual Big Mac combo meal and an unsweetened iced tea. When I came back with the food, Rosamund suddenly changed her attitude. Just a few seconds ago, she was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram.
Hope you enjoy eating meat. Yay!
She pouted and turned away. She acted as though I were sinning just because I was eating a burger. Come on, Rosie. One bite won't make you sick. I begged her again.
One bite? It's meat! Don't you care about those animals?
Rosie frowned at me, then pointed at the burger with an annoyed expression. I understood that she was vegan, so she was annoyed to see me eat meat, but her reaction was too much. After a while, the manager came to our table. I was expecting to be kicked out, but he just smiled gently and offered his hand to Rosamund. It turned out he recognized my famous girlfriend and offered her $500 to review McDonald's new dish. To our surprise, he gave Roseman a small box with the McDonald's logo.
This is a special combo only available at McDonald's. I hope you will consider this offer. They're all vegan,
he said, winking. Roseman looked at the box, then back at the manager incredulously. The manager nodded affirmatively. So Roseman took the box from the manager and said she would consider the offer. That night, my girlfriend live-streamed about a McDonald's food box instead of the usual high-fiber dishes. She gobbled everything in the box, and after every bite was a compliment about McDonald's food. But just as the live stream ended, she immediately ran to the bathroom and threw up everything.
There's no way that was vegan.
She grimaced and looked so annoyed. To be honest, I thought she was merely acting. But what surprised me more was that she asked me to go to McDonald's. Had she really changed her mind? When I entered the restaurant, I couldn't believe my eyes. Roseman was sitting in front of a large order of fries, chicken, burgers, and soda, and she was devouring all of them like crazy. Rosie, are you okay? I sat down in front of her. Are these all vegan? She continued to shove the food into her mouth as if she were starving. Even though I was a McDonald's fan, I was a bit disgusted to see my girlfriend acting like this. She was like a robot, eating a bunch of food within minutes without any intention of stopping. I mean, the amount of food on the table seemed too much for even two people. Roseman, are you all right? I worried. Looking around, I recognized some other KOLs that I followed on Instagram. They were behaving as ridiculous as my girlfriend. The manager I encountered the previous day was giving the same special boxes to those customers. After this, we had a quarrel about how she was completely ignoring me and only paying attention to the food. But Roseman just didn't care about me, and she didn't post anything on Instagram either. After 3 days, I'd had enough, so I came to her house to find her. Gosh, the floor was covered in paper boxes and cups, some with leftovers, and they were all from McDonald's. Sitting on the sofa, my beautiful Roseman was no longer herself. She looked literally like a human balloon. Her face was full of grease and oil. She could barely move with her limp legs, and her hands kept shoving food into her mouth. Rose! Rose! I was freaked out and worried. I tried to stop her, but she just kept ignoring me. She went totally crazy for the food. Listen to me. She was just busy with her stuffing career. Finally, I had to call 911. Roseman was taken to the hospital. At the same time, the food was taken for examination. It turned out that in those special boxes, there was a sort of strongly addictive chemical that forced people into stuffing themselves and making their bodies bloat up. The evil manager, who was now wanted by the police, ran away with the money. And my Roseman, I don't think she'll ever recover her mental health.
McDonald's! McDonald's! I want McDonald's! Give me McDonald's! Give me McDonald's!
But I know and remember exactly what I have been through. More than 20 years have passed. The memory of the strange parade still haunts me, even in my sleep. July 4th, 20 years ago, My parents and I went to my father's brother's house in the suburbs, which took us 4 hours of driving. I was overwhelmed by the gorgeous view of the street. I even saw the colorful antique cars ready for the parade.
Where are the parade people from?
I asked my cousin, Claire.
I don't know.
Claire shrugged. I noticed that the cars were moving into the forest.
I wonder where they'll go after the parade.
Not waiting for Claire to answer, I ran after the convoy into the forest.
Max! Max! Wait!
Ouch! Suddenly I slipped and fell. Claire helped me get up, and the two of us kept chasing after those people. Claire and I ran into the forest, but when we got deeper, all the colorful cars had disappeared, as if they had evaporated.
Where are they?
I turned to Claire, but was surprised to find out that she too had disappeared.
Claire?
I panicked and called her name, but all I received was silence.
Claire? Where are you?
There was no reply. The many noises of the parade resounded in the air. Peeking through the foliage, I saw a man in a strange outfit, looking like Uncle Sam. He was very tall and skinny. His head swayed, then slowly moved in front of me.
Happy 4th of July.
He greeted me in a hoarse voice.
Who are you?
A little scared, I stepped back.
Are you looking for Claire? The little girl has already joined us. Follow me.
He was like a robot. After finishing his sentence, he quickly turned away. I couldn't wait to see Claire, so I followed the man. The sight before me made my eyes widen in surprise. That was the parade in the town earlier, but the people looked very strange. They were like a circus troupe, and even though they were all dressed in festive costumes, their bodies were in many different shapes. Some were tall and raw-boned, some were terribly fat, and some had a super crooked gait. The only thing they had in common was their black eye sockets and lifeless faces.
Happy 4th of July. Come and join us.
One man handed me a strange flag and hat. At that moment, I was hypnotized. For a second, I forgot about Claire and just unconsciously kept following those strangers. As the procession passed through a cemetery,
Ouch!
I suddenly tripped. That brought me back to my senses to see Claire right in front of me. She was in a weird dress, just like the crowd. I pushed my way through the crowd and walked over to her.
Hey, Claire!
I called.
Claire!
I patted her shoulder again, but she seemed to ignore me. I panicked and pulled Claire away. The others immediately turned their heads to chase after us. I was scared to death, tears welling up in my eyes. I didn't know what to do but pull Claire and run as fast as possible. After running a while, I was so tired that I stopped.
Claire, are you okay?
Claire's face terrified me. Her two eye sockets were like a black hole.
Claire!
I cried and shook Claire, but she didn't sober up.
You joined them!
A shiver went down my spine. Poor Claire.
Join us! Join us!
The strange people still chased right after us, especially the man in the strange hat who kept shouting those words. I was too terrified, so I left Claire to run away. I didn't stop until I saw a glaring light. I used all my strength to get there. When I woke up, I found myself lying on the bed. Adults said that they found me panting in front of the forest. Perhaps I had bumped into something. When I asked about Claire, everyone looked at me with puzzled expressions. There is no Claire.
my uncle said. This almost drove me crazy. I obviously had a cousin named Claire, and together we followed the parade into the woods, even taking part in the bizarre procession. Even though I kept insisting her existence, they still didn't believe me. They assumed that the story about Claire and the strange parade was purely my imagination.
She joined them.
In New York is difficult. I've searched all the forums and hunted down every street, but still couldn't find a decent place for less than $3,000. Just when I felt my luck was running out, I came across an advertisement that to me was a bargain. The building is located on the edge of the city and not many people pass by it. That apartment is on the ground floor with a bedroom, a kitchen, and a tiny living room. The only thing that I don't like about the apartment is the pile of weird furniture left by the previous owner. The curtains, lanterns, wall decorations, or even the sofa sets all look old and discolored. I once tried to sit on the leather chair, and to be honest, the feeling of it is so strange, cold and slippery. What's worse, they all smell like the disinfectant you could smell at the hospital.
Is the previous owner a creep or something?
When thinking about the workload and money I have to spend on redecorating the apartment. For the first few weeks, I simply put a mattress in the middle of the house to sleep since the moving process cost me a bundle. One day, I was so exhausted that I fell asleep immediately as soon as I laid down on my back. I don't know what time it was, but when I woke up, it was already dawn. My whole body was drenched in sweat. I was so weak that I couldn't feel my own breath. The nightmare was so real. I saw dozens, sometimes even countless dark figures with distorted, disgusting faces surrounding me. They clung to me. I was in a complete state of panic, yet I couldn't make a sound.
What the heck was that?
I thought it was all just a dream, but deep down, I know it's more than that. Whenever I lie down and am about to sleep, that dream comes back and haunts my night. The only way to get rid of it is keeping myself awake all the time. After 1 week, I felt like I had sleep paralysis. Sometimes, I see a disfigured woman in a white dress, always standing at the end of my bed. She kept squealing shrill screams and scratching herself. Sharp black fingernails continued to expose the flesh, and drops of blood dropped to the floor. The drops of blood are not the usual red color, but they are black and have a foul odor. Still, sweat broke out my body, but I couldn't move. Then, I noticed the woman pointing to the corner of the house, then repeated the action a few times before disappearing.
What? There's nothing wrong with that house. The contract is clear. No rent refunds.
After that, the owner hung up on the phone. So that's it. I can't get out of here soon. I decided to pour the rest of my money to eliminate the creepy vibe of this apartment. Room makeover is such a hard task. I had to move furniture all the way to the center, remove curtains, strip floors, and repaint walls, and so on. One evening, after peeling off the bedroom carpet, I discovered a broken piece of wood on the floor. So I carefully removed them, and I saw a small notebook with different names and dates. That looked so old and dirty. Curiosity got the best of me. I Google one of those names, and the results bring goosebumps to all over my body. A bunch of old news articles about a missing person popped up. The name and date of the disappearance of that person and all others perfectly match what's written in the notebook.
Oh my god, what is it?
I trembled with fear. Could it be? Could it be? The previous owner killed all of these people? I rushed out of that damn apartment and headed to the nearest police station I could find. The police then told me what I found might be the clue connecting the mysterious disappearances together. So they sent out the crime scene team. I was only allowed to stand outside the door when they investigated the house. Suddenly, I overheard one text saying,
Yup, it's human.
Human? What's human? And here's what I got.
Sir, have you thrown any furniture in this apartment? We need to collect all of them.
When my brain processed the information, he continued, the curtains, lanterns, and everything here are made of human skin.
All were probably peeled off from the missing...
I could feel nothing but blind terror. Could it be all those dark figures with terrible shapes were the missing people the police said? Could it be that girl in the white dress scares me every night was one of them? No.
And she didn't have a raincoat either. If the rain hadn't stopped, maybe she would have to stay overnight at the store. But she didn't like that at all, because there was a rumor that this store was haunted.
Don't clean the dining room table at 12 o'clock because you might see them.
Baron, a day shift employee, warned Jade so.
Them?
The kids, Jade. Don't you know? Baron shook his head. 10 years ago, there was a serial murder here, but the killer was never identified. The victims were 5 children. They were dismembered and stuffed in 5 mascots. From then on, their ghosts haunted this restaurant. When the clock pointed to 12, they would appear, started singing, dancing, even breaking furniture.
The corpse stuffed into Charles' mascot is the most mischievous and evil,
Baron suddenly emphasized, which gave Jade a sudden goosebump. However, she signed in the contract for the night shift work, so she couldn't break it.
As long as I don't get there at 12 o'clock, I'll be fine.
But things were out of her expectation. Now it was raining heavily and she was stuck at the restaurant. The worst thing was the weak electrical system here, which made it even more gloomy. She tried to get the story Baron had told that morning out of her mind. The silence inside gave her a minor goosebump. Taking a deep breath, Jade took the mop to the dining table. The strange noise from the stage startled Jade, but when she turned around, there was nothing but 5 animatronics standing motionless on stage. Jade continued to pile chairs on the table. The hum that echoed through the air made Jade shiver. It was the song Out of This World that the animatronics band always performed. Jade looked at the animatronics on stage and assumed they were faulty, so she decided to check them. Jade slowly moved towards Charles the mouse. It stood there motionless with a smile while the humming still resounded.
Rock control to all my friends.
Charles suddenly bellowed out a loud, raspy sound like it was faulty. Its whole body began to convulse with the arms flailing wildly. Its mouth moved, and its eyes blinked rapidly, and the verse it was singing kept repeating, over and over, growing louder and louder. Jade had to cover her ears because of the strange squealing. She panicked and staggered out of the dining table. Jade sat at the counter. She was panting, and her limbs were still shaking from the unexpected encounter. The restaurant was really haunted. She took out her phone and texted her manager to ask for a shift change. But it was almost midnight. He was probably sleeping. On the outside, it was still pouring down, but Jade decided to leave. She quickly put all her things in the backpack. Jade sped up. The more panicked she got, the more quickly she did. She no longer had the courage to go check the electrical system, just using the flashlight on her cell phone to shine the way. After getting out of the counter, she found large footprints on the floor. Its color resembles blood. Those footprints extend from the dining table to the cashier counter. Jade was so scared that her legs were shaking, and she stepped back. Her back just hit something. She slowly rolled her eyes up. Mouse Charles's head gradually appeared from the darkness. It was smiling, and from there, a
A few drops of liquid splashed on Jade's face. She raised her hands to touch the liquid. Oh my God, that was blood. Jade screamed in fear. She tried to run out of the damn restaurant as fast as she could. The truck was approaching when Jade rushed across the road. The driver couldn't brake in time and crashed into her. Jade was lying under the front of the car, her head and face all crushed, her bones and joints broken. Blood gushed out from her mouth, mixing with the torrential rain. The driver called an ambulance while Jade was dying in pain. Inside the dark corner of the store, Baron and mascot Charles is dazed, his limbs shaking with fear. He just wanted to have a little praying.
It's been so long since I felt this good. Flash back from my neighborhood.
It's a dreary winter day. I stand in front of my treasure, the Harry Potter collection, while sipping a cup of coffee. This familiar scene reminds me of what happened 10 years ago, when I was just a 10-year-old kid, being a boy who loved to explore things. My best friend at the time was Ronan. Being a die-hard Harry Potter fan, I just called him Ron. And since we're so close, I considered myself Harry as well. Interesting, right? Ron and I loved going to the train station after school. Back then, I always believed that the barrier between platforms 9 and 10 holds the secret entrance to the magical platform 9 3/4, which of course could lead us to Hogwarts. There was a man who often sat at the corner of the railway platform, wearing a cape, like a witch's costume. One afternoon, I noticed a young boy approach the old man with a wand in his hand.
Hey Ron, do you think he's an employee of platform 9 3/4?
No idea. Ron's dusty answer disappointed me. I stopped talking to him, turned to see the empty corner. The old man and the boy with the wand were no longer there.
Oh no, I lost track of them.
I came to the railway platform, but still, I found nothing.
It's dinner time. We need to go home.
After that day, Ron and I were stuck in the house for a whole week due to the heavy snowfall. As soon as the weather improved, I picked up the phone and called his house.
Hey, come over. We're gonna go to the station. Don't forget your wand.
By the time we got there, it was already dark. Only a few people were passing by. We stood in a familiar place, tried to find the employee of platform 9 3/4, but that day, he didn't sit in his familiar corner. Ron stared at me in the confusion, so I had to reassure him.
If you want to be a witch, you have to trust me. The other day, I saw that man took a boy to Hogwarts. That boy has a wand, just like us.
Then, Ron and I approached the place where the man usually sat, but it just made us more disappointed. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew up from nowhere. It brought goosebumps to the back of my neck.
Bruh, is that Azkaban Dementor or something? I don't know, but let's go home. It's getting dark.
I ignored Ron's words and tried to linger. A few minutes passed. From the darkness suddenly appeared a shadow, a thin and tall body. Oh my God, it's definitely Azkaban Dementor. In the distance, he was dark and threatening. A few seconds later, the shadow approached us and began to show its face. Underneath the cape, I saw ragged clothes. His face was terrifying and gave me nightmares for years. And in his hand was not a magic wand, a bloody knife. He smiled sinisterly, revealing jagged yellow teeth.
Run!
Ron yelled.
No! I spent my whole life preparing for this.
and then loudly chant the incantation, Expecto Patronum. Yet nothing happened. The man almost caught me. While my legs were wobbly with fear, Ron grabbed my hand and we ran as fast as we could.
Idiot. You want to die? Run!
Just then, I tripped and got my feet stuck in the railway tracks. The madman was still standing over there and laughing. Oh my God, that's it. Am I going to die like this? My fear spiked. I frantically waved my wand to hope for a miracle. The train was already very close that could hit me in any seconds. When I'm about to pass down, Ron ran down and managed to free my leg. He made it out before the train cut through and left the madman, who was still laughing, wildly behind. That night, when Ron took me home, my dad got really mad. He thought I sneaked to the train station without asking his permission. Turns out his concerns are well grounded. During that week, the news had spread about the disappearance of boys my age. In the most recent case, the boy's mother said that after she lost her son while refueling at a gas station near the railway, and the common thing between the boy and the other victims is that they are all Harry Potter fans.
Horror story that haunts me until today. 10 years ago, when I was a 17-year-old girl, my mom asked me to babysit the neighbor's kid because they had to go to a party. Well, of course, I couldn't say no to her. However, the kid that I was supposed to babysit was 16 years old. His name was Tyler. He suffered from an intellectual disability, and people said that his mind was like a 5-year-old.
Hi.
I tried to be friendly, but Tyler gave me a really frightened glance. I mean, really frightened.
Goodbye and enjoy the party, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson.
I waved my hand as I closed the door. There were only me and Tyler in the house now.
So, I'm Tammy. Your name is Tyler, isn't it?
But Tyler didn't care at all. He only focused on finishing his painting stuff.
Tammy, could you please turn off the TV?
Okay. What are you painting?
I was curious. Tyler still didn't answer.
Can I join too?
Tyler nodded his head instead of saying a word. So we were both coloring and painting our own works of art.
Are you hungry?
I asked. Tyler nodded while painting attentively.
I'll make you something. What would you like to eat?
Up to you.
Tyler mumbled. So I went to the kitchen and prepared some sandwiches which were Tyler's favorite. When I came back, Tyler was no longer painting his picture. He was sitting there and mumbling.
Go out? I can't. Mommy won't let me. Can I? Where are you? Really? My babysitter?
Tyler?
I was a bit freaked out, though. After hearing my voice, he stopped mumbling.
Here, your sandwiches.
Tyler ran to the kitchen before touching the food. I guessed he was getting his favorite orange juice. At that moment, I had a closer look at the picture on the table. I guessed it was Tyler in the picture, but there were two of them in the same clothes. One looked normal with a smile, and the other, gosh, he had two scary dark eye sockets that gave me goosebumps. I ran quickly to the kitchen. Tyler was standing still, and there was broken glass pieces on the floor.
Don't move, Tyler!
I rushed to clean the mess. Meanwhile, Tyler was still standing emotionlessly, like he was a mannequin.
Tyler! Tyler!
I shook his shoulders in panic. I didn't scold or blame Tyler for breaking the glass, as I thought it was a harmless mistake. However, Tyler seemed a little bit different, like he wasn't himself anymore.
Tammy, TV remote!
He suddenly turned to me, That was the first time he looked me straight in the eyes, and I could feel the cold shiver running down my spine.
Sure.
There was news about a serial murder on TV. It was Tyler who was giggling at the news.
Tyler, you okay?
I was a bit freaked out now. Yeah. He replied without even looking at me.
Should I change to a cartoon channel?
I reached out to get the remote. He quickly gripped my wrist.
If you touch it, I'ma kill you.
He said, cold-blooded. I quickly pulled my hand back. There was something strange and scary about him. Not only did he watch the murder news calmly, but he also ate a lot of snacks, which I was told was what he hated the most.
Tell me, bring me milk. Milk! Milk!
Okay.
I went to the kitchen to get the bottle of milk. While I was pouring the milk into the glass, something just popped up in my mind.
Tyler, you're lactose intolerant, aren't you?
My body was frozen when I saw Tyler standing in the middle of the room.
She knew.
No! Don't hurt her!
Shut up! You got to kill her.
Tyler!
Tyler turned around, staring at me with his dark eye sockets. In his hand was a sharp knife.
Tyler, where did you get that?
I stepped back. Tyler didn't hear my voice anymore.
Tyler, drop the knife down.
I tried to keep calm.
No! No! You have to die!
That voice wasn't Tyler's anymore. And before he rushed over with the knife, I ran quickly outside and locked the door. I tried to call Mr. and Mrs. Wilson in a panic, realizing how frightened I was. They immediately left the party and called 911. When Tyler's parents came home with the police, Tyler was back to normal. No one believed me, no matter how many times I tried to explain. Even though 10 years have passed now, I still couldn't forget what happened that day. The day Tyler, the neighbor kid that I babysat, was replaced by his evil and cruel personality. A waiter brought the food out. That sandwich seemed so alluring. And then I took a bite. Oh my gosh, it was, how to say, so divine. It tasted so different from the other sandwiches I tried before. I couldn't help devouring it. Just after a few minutes, the food boxes were empty. Oh no. Oh no. Look what I just did. Guilt quickly engulfed me. I was scared and frustrated, and then ran out of the store. That night, I had a high fever and terrible nausea, so I rushed to the bathroom. Strangely enough, I didn't vomit, but instead coughed violently. And then, from my mouth, I pulled out a feather. And when I looked in the mirror, I discovered that I had white hairs on my face, and they felt very itchy. I picked them up. Ouch! Were these hairs growing out from me?
Michael, are you okay?
My mother nervously called at the door.
I'm fine.
I didn't want my mom to know all of this. I gritted my teeth and endured it, tried to pull out the hairs one by one, even though my face was bleeding. I shouldn't have eaten it. I shouldn't have eaten it. After getting rid of the hairs, I went to bed and prepared to sleep. I hid those chicken feathers under the pillow. The next morning, I woke up tired. I yawned, but realized my voice was different. Okay, wait, what happened to my throat? I screamed, but the only sound that came out was a chicken croaking. I panicked and ran to the bathroom. Oh my God, my head had turned into a chicken's head. I cried.
Michael, what's in there? Are you okay?
My mother banged on the door. How could I let my mother see this form? But she kept banging on the door nervously. I panicked, put on my hat, and ran out of the room. I turned into a monster! I broke down, sobbed, but only heard the chicken croaking. I dared not raise my head to see people. As I ran across the Chick-fil-A store, the smell of fried chicken invited me in again. I didn't dare to speak, but only pointed at the menu with my sleeve. No one had seen my monstrous appearance. My delicious dish was brought out. I was about to eat when a staff member accidentally spilled a glass of water on me. So I reflexively took off my hat. She saw my appearance and shouted. Monster! Everyone in there started to yell.
Monster! Monster!
Those eyes made me panic. I was so scared, so dizzy that I could barely stand. I'm a monster! I rushed out of the Chick-fil-A store in a panic.
Hey! Please wait!
I couldn't hide my horrible appearance. People's eyes made my heart break. Monster! I was about to turn into a chicken. It was my mother.
Michael? Michael! Where are you? Where are you?
She sounded so scared and worried. I wished I could call her, wished I could tell her what happened. But what came out of my mouth was just... And then when I was in despair, I didn't even notice that I was out in the middle of the road. I woke up to find myself in the hospital. Panicked, I raised my hand to touch my face. My whole face was bandaged. Mommy?
There was a rumor. No matter what you do, or what your purpose is, never stay at a Chuck E. Cheese till the 5th night. Because if you do, you will go crazy or even die for no reason.
Nonsense.
Stephen laughed at the story. He thought this rumor was stupid.
So, are you still gonna take the job?
The manager asked.
Yeah.
Stephen shrugged.
Remember, after checking the electrical system, you better go back to the security room. Don't stay outside for too long,
the manager said while handing the keys to Stephen before leaving. On the first day of work, Stephen tried to show himself as a responsible employee. The first duty was to check the electrical system. Chuck E. Cheese at night was so damn quiet. The dim light made it hard for Stephen to see things clearly, so he had to use the phone's flashlight.
Well, it's broken.
Stephen flicked on the broken light switch in the hallway. Then he decided to go to the electrical system room through the dining table area.
How did it get here?
Stephen was surprised to see the mascot of Charles standing in the corner of the room. He then pushed it to the backstage. After checking the electrical system, Stephen returned to the security room.
So boring.
He leaned on the chair, sipping hot coffee and looking at the security camera. Here came the very first nuisance.
What the hell?
Stephen noticed a guy in uniform sweeping the arcade.
Hey, it's late. Stop cleaning.
You can do it tomorrow, Steven said over the microphone. But that man ignored his words. Hey! Steven lost his patience.
Damn it!
He said angrily and decided to walk over to the arcade.
Did you hear what I said?
He mumbled. But when Steven got there, the arcade was empty. There were only the game machines covered with dust in the corner.
Lucky for you.
Steven went back to the monitoring room, thinking that the man had finished his job and left. This light work really bored Steven. Even though he had finished a cup of coffee, he still couldn't resist the sleepiness. So Steven closed his eyes and fell asleep quickly. The first 4 nights had passed peacefully. And soon came the 5th night. Steven continued his boring job, walking around the store, checking the electrical system and locking all of the doors. Then he returned to the security room and turned on the cameras one by one. Each area appeared in sequence on the screen. The cleaning staff in the arcade, restroom, play area, all silent at night.
You don't need to walk around. Just stay in the security room tonight.
Steven suddenly was reminded of the manager's words. But he had been on duty for 4 nights in a row and didn't see anything dangerous. Steven thought while clicking to view the camera.
Ah! Oh, shoot!
Steven was startled when he saw Charles's face covering the entire screen.
Who the hell did this?
Steven angrily went to check the dressing room. But when he got there, there was no one in the dressing room. All animatronics were gone.
What the hell?
Steven returned to the stage to check, but there was nothing either.
Hi, player! Are you ready for the fun night?
Steven, startled, looked around.
Hey, this isn't funny at all,
he shouted.
It's time for the hunt night!
The room turned red with the deafening alarm bells ringing. Steven covered his ears. The sound hurt his head so badly. He quickly ran towards the door but was stopped by Charles the mouse, which held a bloody axe in its hand. Steven panicked and ran off to the other side. The dark corridor was lit by the dim flashlights. Steven ran in panic. The heavy footsteps with the evil laughter of Charles and the other mascots were right behind him. Ellen the chicken threw the axe but missed him. He kept running away. Steven was now hiding in the dressing room among the dusty and furry mascots. He tried to breathe softly so those horrible things wouldn't find him. Heavy footsteps resounded in the air along with eerie laughter. Those creatures were very close, and they were hunting Steven. The animatronic's attention was drawn to the wardrobe, so they slowly approached. There was no one inside. Steven managed to escape the dressing room before the robots found him. He panicked and ran towards the exit, but it was locked.
Damn it!
Steven ran to the security room again, but no matter how hard he tried, the door wouldn't open.
No, 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 please God, no!
Steven muttered desperately. Steven kept running away, but this time the robots blocked all the aisles. They came closer and closer. While panicked Steven slowly stepped back, he suddenly hit something. That was Charles the mouse.
No! No! No!
The hunting night ended and a new day came. The mascots returned to the backstage, closing their eyes again as if nothing had happened.
It can get tiring to watch him go about his shenanigans in the pursuit of viral fame. asking me to pick up things for him while he was traveling. To be honest, I was quite relieved since I didn't want to receive any more cheap view pranks from him. One evening I got home to find a big box waiting on his front porch. It was wrapped and glued very well along with the note, "Open the box right after you receive it." Damn it, I'm sure this is some kind of prank set up for me. I decided to drag the box over to my house to store it in the garage. I admit, I had trouble lifting the box on my own. It was really freaking heavy. I had been to the garage for a long time, so I struggled for a while to pull it up. As I was trying my best to lift the box, I tripped over a ledge in the door. I lost my grip on the package and fell to the ground and heard a light crack inside. God, I hope I haven't broken anything important. But that's okay. I can blame the carrier. That's what I thought. I dragged the box the rest of the way, setting it in the corner for days. Until a few days passed, there was a strong stench rose coming from the box from the garage that I couldn't ignore. He ordered raw meat to gradually roast the mukbang or something. I covered my nose as I approached the box with a pair of scissors in my hands. I probably wouldn't even have needed them to open it, as it had become soggy enough at the bottom to poke through with a finger. I also prepared dozens of plastic bags to handle the pile of meat. But in the end, it turned out that I didn't need all of that. There was meat inside, not beef or pork, but human flesh. No, it's worse than that. That's my neighbor lying in there. Dead. His flesh began to rot and decompose. I rushed out of the garage, unable to hold back the nausea that gushes out of my rectum. My body softened with fear. I still managed to call the police. It was kind of hard not to suspect the man with the corpse in its garage. After all, thankfully they soon realized I wasn't involved. There was one piece of irrefutable evidence in my neighbor's own hands that proved my innocence: a vlogging camera. They showed me the footage only once. Turns out my neighbor took on the challenge to resend himself from the shipping facility to his home. The last video on camera read, "Hey, what's up guys? I think I'm in a truck right now. I can feel it moving." On the last entry, the box toppled over. He broke his neck, and that was it. The camera continued to record until the power went out. There's one thing that I didn't tell the police. Just right before the tumble that leads to his death, I heard the familiar screeching sound. It's the sound of my garage door, slowly being pulled up.
When two guys who own the luxury dark channel posted a video about the dark web dating site, my group set up a challenge.
Okay, since we're all single, the challenge will be to find a girlfriend on the dark web.
Then, challenge accepted messages pop up. As someone who is used to the dark web, I certainly can't lose this challenge. That night, after I accessed the dating site on the dark web, I clicked to see a list of girls who are available. If you've watched the video of Luxury Dark, you can probably guess what kind of weirdos they are. Some people have severely burned bodies, some have wrinkled skin, weirdly messy hair, or even distorted parts. Among them, the blinking black-haired girl named Mia. She has a hobby of collecting dead insects, just like me. After a few days of texting back and forth, Mia asked for my home address and I gave it to her. That very night, she came to my house. Mia wore a white ankle-length dress. She looked exactly like her avatar, with pitch black hair. What's strange was that she didn't wear anything on her feet.
"Did you walk barefoot here?"
"Well, I took an Uber,"
Mia replied nonchalantly, and just like that, I let her get in the house. That challenge I officially won. But there is one thing my friends didn't know. I fell in love with Mia. It didn't take long for Mia and I to officially live together. Living in the same house with Mia is wonderful. Everything was great in the beginning. We get along really well, and we've never had more than a brief argument. But then she started humming. It's so dumb, I know, but she's always whistling this weird song, like the kind of tune you'd hear in a horror movie. At first, I would just hear her humming it when she was showering. Even though I tried to ignore it, I couldn't. It got stuck in my head and it drove me a little crazy. Just like the time when Adele's Easy on Me first came out. You know the type. After a week or so, I asked her what the song was, and she just laughed. I'm wondering if maybe she came up with it on her own, especially when she started doing it more. One night while I was sleeping, I was woken up by that humming sound like a loudspeaker pounding right next to my ear. I thought I was dreaming, but no, I was wrong. I opened my eyes to see she was lying on her side, staring at me and humming that terrifying, scary song again.
Jesus Christ, you scared me to death!
In response, Mia remained silent, and suddenly she smiled. God, that smile didn't just stop at that grin, but it stretched and stretched until her lips reached her ears.
What the hell?
I shivered but couldn't move. Just like that, Mia, with her bloody mouth, bared her sharp teeth and came close to me. Just when I thought she was about to chew my head off, Mia stopped, returned to her senses, and went back to sleep like nothing happened. That night, I lay motionless in that position until morning, unable to close my eyes, and just kept my eyes on the ceiling. The next day, I came home late from work exhausted, partly because I couldn't sleep the night before. Mia was in the kitchen preparing food, and she just kept humming.
Crazy bitch!
I felt like I was blowing things out of proportion, but honestly, how hard is it to just not humming all the time? I told her to stop, but she just huffed and kept cooking.
What do you mean?
She said. It seemed that she wanted to start the fight. I lost my mind. I slapped Mia hard. Just then, she got freaked out. She told me she wasn't doing it and didn't know what my problem was. She called me crazy just because I was getting a little upset. And somehow that was all I could take. I grabbed one of the cast iron pans from the stove and swung it at her head as hard as I could. Mia fell over and smashed her head on the counter, falling to the ground. I think I hit her maybe 3 or 4 times. I don't remember, but I feel horrible. I couldn't believe I'd lost my temper like that, and I have no idea how I can fix this, regardless of how much she might have been provoking me. So if you ask me, never find the lovers on the dark web. But you know what the weird thing is? She's still freaking humming. 2 days have passed. Mia was still lying on the kitchen floor. The blood had dried. Her eyes were rolling back and her jaw was shattered into 100 pieces. But she didn't stop. I just need her to shut up. Just shut up. Shut up.
Hi everyone, it's Faith again. Today I want to show you guys this abandoned McDonald's restaurant. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's go!
This McDonald's was located in a small suburb, and it took Faith over an hour to find the way there. But it was worth all her efforts. She felt excited to be the first YouTuber to explore this place and was sure this video would break the record of her channel.
I heard that there was a massacre here, and the victims were McDonald's employees. The killer was never arrested.
Faith emphasized while filming the inside of the restaurant. There were neatly arranged tables and chairs on which many dust layers had thickened over time.
Look!
The old menu and some posters were still there on the board and also covered with dust and mold. Faith went to see the ice cream machines, the soda maker, and fryers. Suddenly, she saw a patch of mold on the floor behind the counter.
The police once found a body here. This place is a mess.
Faith panned the camera around to the kitchen.
I think we should move on.
Faith said to the camera and stepped over the mess on the floor toward the bathroom. As she was walking along the hallway, the flashlight went out. Yikes, she didn't change the battery. Faith stopped to shake the flashlight, hoping to brighten it up a little longer.
Oh, shoot!
Faith was startled, almost dropping the flash. Behind the window was a smiling Ronald Clown statue, whose eyes were wide open and very spooky. The statue looked old and odd.
Look, guys, this clown looks so real.
Realizing nothing so dangerous about this thing, she moved on to the other corners. The next destination was the toilet area, which was told to be where the murderer hid the corpses. Right after she walked to the door, the unpleasant musty smell wafted out. She gulped, hesitating whether to go in. Even though people said it was a rumor, it still frightened Faith.
I'm feeling pretty nervous, guys. Just a rumor anyway.
Faith turned the doorknob. Nothing special here.
Oh, just a regular bathroom.
Faith sighed, yet still wanted to check it. She went around with the camera on. It looked cleaner than the other rooms, and there was no mold, no blood, or sign of murder here.
Guys, the rumor is fake.
Faith left the toilet. This time, Faith focused on the floor she was standing on. There were a lot of stains, some messy piles of things, some dusty paintings and doodles.
God! These are really...
Faith was panic-stricken, then she fell to the ground, dropping the camera. On the ceiling was a dead body hanging. The corpse was wearing a McDonald's uniform. Her hand dangled in the air. Her face with 2 black eye sockets was covered in messy hair. Suddenly, her mouth started to move. Faith was so scared that her whole body froze. The brown liquid trickled down, emitting a foul stench throughout the air. Faith was panic-stricken, then she fell to the ground, dropping the camera. Rumors were true, and this place was really haunted. At this point, she didn't care about the video anymore. She quickly grabbed the camera and ran away from the abandoned restaurant without looking back. Fortunately, during her run, Faith found a police station. She quickly rushed in. When the police arrived, they quickly searched the entire restaurant but did not find the body. But the police continued to investigate based on Faith's video and traces at the scene. Faith offered the police some footage from her camera for investigation. As she watched the tape to the end, Faith shivered when she discovered the most terrible thing. There was no statue of Ronald the Clown in this abandoned McDonald's at all.
It's itself in creating a fun, family-friendly environment. Still, every job has its horror stories, and I'm here to bring you one of those about Hooters, about what's behind those pretty faces and hot bodies. Grace was a good friend of mine. We first met at a book club and had hung out since then. She was also a Hooters girl. She was like Marilyn Monroe with the face of an angel. Anyways, that day, Grace asked me to pick her up after work because her car broke down. That was my first visit to Hooters.
Janet, come here. Don't be shy.
Grace told me over the phone.
It's okay. I'll wait here.
Come on, it's going to be a long wait.
Honestly, I couldn't refuse her anymore. I stepped into the restaurant, and I was surprised. I thought this was full of male guests. But it turned out they were of all ages and genders, and all the waitresses were so hospitable and nice, and they were so beautiful. One of them took me to the table to wait for Grace, who was now busy taking orders.
Hey, cutie, wanna hang out for a night?
That drunk man over there said to Grace. She seemed annoyed, but still smiled.
When his hand moved down to her waist, she grabbed it and pushed it away.
Damn!
He gave a smack on Grace's cheek. Ah! Hey! I ran over and shoved him.
You bastard!
That man was about to fight back, but a few guests got to stop him.
Are you okay?
I went to help Grace, but she pushed my hand away. Her cheek was still red.
Sorry, my friend is new here.
It's none of your business. Grace turned back to the man, whispered to him, and winked.
Okay, baby.
The man licked his lips, then followed her.
Grace, stop it. He was trying to harass.
I stopped Grace on the way.
Just stay out of this.
Grace gritted her teeth, then turned to smile at the man and went inside the staff room. Something was wrong. It had been an hour since they went into the room. What if my friend was harmed? I couldn't stay here like this. I must go look for her. While the other girls were busy, I snuck inside. The door wasn't locked, so I went in. It was so quiet here.
Where can she be?
I muttered as I walked around the room. There was nobody there. I looked around and was startled. Laughter seemed to come from behind the wall. I touched the wooden wall. Maybe there was something inside this paint layer. Suddenly, the wall cracked open. There was a secret door. I went in before it closed. The hallway was quite dark and even quieter than the room. After going through a few turns, I saw an old door without a room or number.
Maybe they are here.
I pushed the door and went in. Although the light was weak, I could still see things quite clearly, including those I shouldn't have seen.
On the floor, there was a man lying. His whole body was white and pale. His eyes rolled back as if he had been drained of blood. Standing around him were 4 or 5 girls, including Grace. They were...
Janet, didn't I tell you to wait?
Scared and shocked, my limbs stiffened. I couldn't say a word. As Grace moved closer to me, my heart was about to explode. I used all of my strength to run away. Fortunately, the secret door hadn't closed yet. When I stepped out of that room, everyone looked at me. I didn't know what to say or explain because I was so scared and panicked that I ran out and drove away without daring to look back.
I called the police and was horrified to learn that many more bodies had been discovered in that room. But those Hooter girls, including my book club friend Grace, had disappeared. Although I have moved to another city, the experience at Hooters still haunts me. Sometimes when I'm driving past a Hooters,
Had been always struggling with a list of mental illnesses, but of course I wouldn't blame her. After all she'd done for me. The first year after we got married, our life was like a dream. However, Haley changed when she found out she couldn't have children. She often had trouble sleeping and had to take medicine, yet her condition only got worse, and strange things constantly happened in our house after that. Once, after having the sweet night together, I cuddled Haley to sleep. I don't know how long it had passed. I was woken up by an uncomfortable feeling around my chest. When I opened my eyes, it was pitch black. That's when I realized my face was covered by the pillow, and the one who was pressing the pillow down my face was none other than Haley. It seemed like she wanted to take my life. As the oxygen level gradually ran out, my whole chest tightened, and pain invaded my body. I didn't get why my wife was so strong then. I screamed and yanked until I was finally able to get out. "What the heck, Haley?" She kept her gaze in and wandered back to her bedroom. The scary thing is that after such incidents, Haley did not remember anything. The next morning, when I told her to change doctors, Haley insisted it was all because the house was haunted. The demons in the house kept commanding her to harm me, and when she disobeyed, they would take over her body. We decided to move to the suburbs. Haley could no longer hear the voice in her head. She was happy and so was I. At the end of October, I had to work away from home for a week, although Haley was still taking her regular medication. I still wanted her to invite her friends to come over. However, my wife refused. Don't worry, the old Haley was dead. I had to give up and start my business trip. On the 5th day of my business trip, I called to find Haley much worse than usual. I tried to ask, but Haley said, "I'm just tired." The next day and the day after that, I called again, but Haley didn't answer. I called an early flight to make sure she's okay. I arrived in the living room at 11 o'clock at night. Haley was not in the living room. I called everywhere but got no answer. She must be asleep, I thought, as I headed for the stairs. Oh God, my poor wife. To my horror, I found my wife's body hanging from the banister. Under was a note saying, "I'm sorry, but the voice doesn't stop. I have to stop it myself before I hurt you again." I was about to help her down when I realized it was too late. Her neck had been hanging for so long that it stretched a few inches. You probably already know what happened after that. I called 911. It's been a year since Haley died. This might be the right time for my lover, Daniel, to move in. Fake fertility results, swapping sleeping pills, installing a remote control sound system in my home, and a good story that took a lot of work to come up with. All of it worked perfectly, and nobody even doubted. It's all worth it though, as now I can live a long life with the love of my life.
Vanessa took a deep breath. The last time she was in this class, the students, including one named Nick, pranked her with snakes and scorpions to expel her from the class. Even so, the principal didn't agree to change class for her, for the reason that the homeroom teacher hadn't returned to work. The kids started to gossip right after she stepped in, like they weren't expecting that this substitute teacher would return. Vanessa put her bag on the table, tried to act like it was nothing, and started her lecture. The kids seemed to be scared after getting a warning from the principal. They didn't chit-chat in the class or make fun of Vanessa anymore. During her lecture, Vanessa didn't notice the staring eyes and mischievous smile from the kid named Nick. Nick's evil smile showed up when he saw the stone hit the window. The sound from the window got Vanessa's attention. She went to open the window and look down, but she saw no one. At that moment, Nick suddenly appeared right behind her.
Miss Van?
Said Nick. Vanessa looked at Nick warily, with her back facing the window.
I'm really sorry for the prank. I didn't mean to scare you at all. Here's a gift for you.
Nick handed the beautifully wrapped bow tie gift, smiling sincerely. Vanessa was very surprised. She hesitated. This naughty boy really meant it. So she took the gift.
Open it up,
Nick urged. Vanessa didn't want to disappoint her student, so she unwrapped the gift. A black snake came out, terrifying Vanessa to death. She stepped back, unsteadily reaching out for Nick. He almost gave his hand to her, but then it pulled back. And so Vanessa fell out the window. The loud sound startled everyone who heard it. The whole class was shocked and rushed out to the window. Vanessa lay on the cement floor. Red blood quickly spread to an area. Her mouth moved and her body twitched slightly. Before passing out, she saw Nick by the window still looking at her and said,
Gotcha.
Vanessa was taken to the hospital. In front of the school board, Nick insisted that Vanessa fell on her own. Besides, no proof of Nick pushing the substitute teacher was found, so he easily got away with his prank. Even so, he deserved an adequate punishment for it. A month later, Vanessa hadn't returned, and all the students believed that she was so scared that she gave up her job.
At this time, the class had been over, and Nick had to stay to do the cleanup. He carried a bucket and a mop in one hand, whistling a melody. The sound echoed in the hallway, causing Nick to stop whistling. He looked around but saw nothing but an empty hallway. The light suddenly flickered. Nick's eyes were wide open, for he saw something at the end of the hallway. It was a person with a high heel on one foot, bare foot on the other, wearing blood-stained white clothes. The person's head was down with loose and long hair. That person had the same outfit as Vanessa. The light turned off and on again. That person disappeared. Nick rubbed his eyes frantically, but still, he only saw an empty hallway.
It's impossible. She's still in the hospital.
Nick confronted himself as he kept walking. Laughter echoed through the air, startling Nick. He immediately turned around. At the end of the hallway, there was Vanessa's ghost. This time, Nick could see her face clearly, blood pouring from her eyes and mouth, falling onto her skirt, staining her white shirt. Nick got panicked. Vanessa had come back for his life. Nick quickly ran out of the hallway. He was truly scared. The footsteps still echoing panicked Nick even more. He ran down the stairs but bumped into the ghost and tripped several times in fear. Nick ran up the stairs to the exit, gasping for breath. When he raised his head, Vanessa's bloody face appeared in front of his face.
Boo! No! No! Oh!
Nick screamed. He jerked backward and then slipped. He fell upside down the stairs. His arms and legs are bent terribly, blood pouring from his nose and mouth. With excruciating pain, blood quickly splattered on the floor. The person was approaching Nick. He couldn't move his arms or any other part and could only stare blankly at Vanessa approaching. Vanessa wiping the blood from her mouth, coldly looking at Nick lying on the floor.
Gotcha,
she said. Then she stepped over Nick's body, leaving him lying in his own blood.
A few years ago, I was in a bad place. My guardian had kicked me out after graduation. I was so worried since I couldn't afford a place to stay at the time. A friend noticed and offered a place for me, since he has an empty room at home. I agreed. Looking back now, I wish I had just stayed in the street. He is a lovable guy, so his friends come to hang out often. Over time, they started to stay with us for longer periods of time, sometimes weeks. His friends were another group of brothers named Joe and Will. The big brother, Joe, is such a nice guy, while the younger one, Will, had a list of mental problems. He believed in the occult and anything of that sort. He would often look me in the eyes and tell me he could see how I would die. Once he even told me that I was possessed by a demon and I needed my soul cleansed. I never really believed in that stuff. Obviously, I was always looking over my shoulder and locking the door of my room. However, I forgot once. It was the day I had my night shift. I was so exhausted that I went to bed right after I got home. About 2 hours later, I suddenly felt something wet on my face. I tried to ignore it and convinced myself it was just a dream. After a while, I felt the wind blowing strongly against my face from nowhere. Feeling itchy, I opened my eyes to check time. The view made me tremble inside. It was Will. He was putting his face very close to mine, his face going wild and crazy. Turns out what I thought was a dream earlier was his drool and breath. I jumped up and pushed him hard. "What the hell is wrong with you?" His body shook like crazy. He couldn't stop muttering, "Demon, demon, demon." The next morning, I told everyone about that. They all knew he had these problems, but he was their friend. They helped him through the hard times and gave him a place to stay. Otherwise, he would be on the streets. I was always on guard around him after the things did to me. No one else seemed to be as concerned as I was. They should have been. One day I was sleeping and my phone rang. It was my boss. He asked if I could come into work an hour early. It was only 12 p.m. I was broke and needed to save money to get out of this house as soon as possible, so I said yes. I walked out into the living room to see my friend Joe sitting on the couch, while Will sat on the floor by the TV. I said goodbye and left for work. It was 5 p.m. when my shift at work was almost complete. When I was about to leave, a policeman approached me. "Hi, this is the police. Something happened at your apartment today and we need your support." I had assumed one of the brothers had been arrested for something illegal, but I was very wrong. The officer then informed me that Will had stabbed and killed his brother and my friend at around 1 p.m. I was shocked. I had just left the house an hour before it happened, and everything seemed fine. Our apartment was a crime scene, so I went to another friend's house to watch the news reports since the police wouldn't give me any information on the case. Over the next couple of days, the information began to be released. Will hadn't just stabbed Joe once, not twice, but over and over, and nearly decapitated the bodies. And my poor friend, he tried so hard to escape from that manic, but unluckily, he was bleeding to death. Will was caught hiding in the bushes near where I worked. I watched the news report in horror. We had known he was unstable, but this? He hadn't confessed anything, but the police found his notebooks. He thought we were possessed by demons, and this was the only way to free us. And my name, it is put in the last, except...
Not a good person.
Nick knows we can't trust people, but this time, he insists. So what? At least you and I don't have to eat the trash. Then, he walked away with a man named Alex. If only Nick could see the monstrous smile on that man's face before he left. Mr. Alex has brought me money like he promised. I don't know how much money Nick made, but a month later, I had an apartment to stay in. I even had enough money to buy a laptop and an old phone. At first, Nick and I couldn't meet in person, but we still talked on the phone.
You know what? I've never eaten that much food in my life. I'll send you the link to watch me on YouTube.
I clicked on the link. Then, on the screen appeared about a dozen videos of Nick sitting in front of a mountain of food. All are fast food, spicy noodles, and sweets.
I thought you only ate things like vegetables and fruits.
In response, Nick said,
Yeah, but audiences don't want to see boring stuff like that. Besides, fast food is delicious as well.
After a few months, Nick appeared more regularly on YouTube with the new title,
The New King of Mukbang!
Gradually, he changed so drastically that I no longer recognized him. My old Nick was calm and gentle, but this one is so rude, not mentioning he gained tons of weight.
Oh my god, how come Nick turns into this person? What happened to him?
As more and more videos are uploaded, less phone calls are made. Until one day, it's impossible for me to reach him. It's been a week since the last time we talked, so I am extremely worried. Since Alex refused to say a word, I decided to follow him. The plan worked. I was led to a large warehouse. I came in to see many small rooms, all of which are dark. However, there was still one room that had the light on. It was the same room Alex had just entered. I moved as quietly as possible and sneaked a peek inside. The things I saw in that room make me shiver every time I think about it. There was a man wearing a red shirt that I didn't even recognize. That man was so overweight that I can't imagine how he could walk. He was tied to a large iron rod. Blood and brown liquid was all over his body.
Let me go! Let me go! You cannot do this to people!
Just then, Alex appeared. In his hand were a lot of pills. He put the whole bunch in that man's mouth and forced him to swallow them all. Only then, when I could look closely at the details of the face, I realized it was Nick. Although his face was much different from before, those eyes, lips were unmistakable.
For God's sake, take these pills! You have another video to shoot in 2 hours.
Nick threw up both in the mouth and in his bottom. He struggled, howling in the slime and smelling terrible. I was trembling inside. My hand shook so hard that I could barely hold the phone. But still, I tried to record the scene because I know no one would believe me without the proof. Just then, Alex spotted my presence.
I don't clearly remember what happened after that. I ran like crazy and somehow I magically escaped from that warehouse. Of course, I reported it to the police. But even with the evidence I had, they still wouldn't believe me because I was just homeless after all. But you guys can. I believe that. And here's the video I took that day. Please bring justice back to Nick.
Please, let me go. If you don't shoot that video, you and that girl will be back to your garbage.
My neck. I felt like dozens of eyes were staring at me from behind. I turned around and got jump scared. At the end of the corridor, and not only one, two, but dozens of mannequins lined up. Jessie giggled.
You're not used to these things? Take your time, and you'll love it.
Her expression made me feel embarrassed. Was the let the light off situation earlier also her joke? I thought. Then I was led down the hallway and stopped in front of an old door.
So this is your room. I hope you like it.
As soon as I entered the room, I felt extremely excited. Not only did Jessie keep the room clean, but she also set up a few mannequins in the corner to help me practice. Oh, Jessie, I don't know how to thank you enough. After chit-chatting for the whole night, I went to bed at around 11 o'clock. When I was dozing off, I suddenly heard the melodious music echoing back, seemingly coming from the first floor. Didn't Jessie say this place is so quiet? Why is there music at 2 a.m.? Unable to fall back asleep, I followed the music and was led down to the dining room. What the hell is this? As soon as I walked down the hall, I was horrified to see Jessie holding a mannequin and dancing passionately. I couldn't see it clearly, but in the dim chandelier light, I could see a mannequin's arm hanging loosely and being swayed by Jessie. I moved closer, intending to call out, but just then I froze. It's not a mannequin, but a human. Jessie's dancing with the torso of a corpse. Panic surges through me, my body shook with fear. I have to get out of here immediately. But when I was about to run, I accidentally tripped on something soft. Immediately a fishy smell hit my nose, straight to my brain. I realized my hands were smeared in mucus. You must be kidding me. In the darkness, I noticed 2 or 3 other mannequins lying around beside me. Or they're not. Oh my gosh, they are definitely not mannequins. They are human corpses. I was falling to the pile of corpses. Suddenly my mind went blank, and everything quickly blurred in front of my eyes. Before I lost consciousness, I could still hear Jesse's voice say,
Say hello to your new friends.
God, I hope this bus never stops.
It was Sunday night, but I still had to go to work. Forgot to mention, I work part-time at a Chuck E. Cheese. I know what you were thinking.
Working at Chuck E. Cheese is a dream job. Having fun with the kids is nothing to complain about.
Wow. Calm down. Hear me up and I'll prove you wrong. Mr. Brooks, the Chuck E. Cheese owner, is now my boss. Ever since I was a kid, I've always thought he was the most caring soul that spends his whole life working for children. Turns out, he's the most inhospitable one. Luckily, I'm just an apprentice, so I don't have to talk to him much. I often caught him standing in a corner, silently observing the whole thing. Not to mention, the work is always overloaded. There was always just me, Mr. Brooks' assistant, and Zane, the employee wearing a dirty old mascot suit.
What are you looking at? You're not paid standing there.
I did not have a moment's rest, but I was no doubt lucky enough to not be forced to wear the costume. For so long, I never even saw the man beneath the mascot. Zane has to talk to children and dance for them all day. What's worse, he was always under the supervision of Mr. Brooks. It's rare for children to laugh so happily these days. Maybe he comes up with something interesting. So I turned around to check it out.
What the hell?
Zane was on stage and staggered like he's drunk. He fell, then got up again, and then fell again. It goes on and on in the crunchy laughter of the children. The mascot shoes were so old and dirty. I froze when watching the thin red line stream down the face of the children's icon.
How could this be committed?
Since I fear the assistant can sense the lost productivity, I went about my business.
You're wearing a mascot today. Zane took an unscheduled break for no reason. And don't let Mr. Brooks know. He gets mad whenever Zane is absent.
When I was on the bus, I got a new message from the manager. What a tiring day, I sighed. Following his instructions, I arrived at the store early and entered the changing room of the other co-worker. The mascot is hanging right there. I took it down and put it on.
Jesus, doesn't anyone wash this thing?
I've never smelled something so rotten. The inside of the mascot was filthy and sticky. I'm sure it was sweat and all sorts of dirt coming from that coworker. Soon, the children arrived. I wasn't used to the job, so I just stood there bouncing around on stage and letting kids laugh at me.
Thank God it's over. Hope Zane will show up tomorrow.
Around 10 p.m., I turned back to the room to put the mascot off. But before I could do anything, a voice behind me made me startled.
Why don't you come and serve me during the break like you were told yesterday?
It's Mr. Brooks. Because I don't get it. I just stand there and hold my breath. I didn't even turn to face him for fear of being revealed. But the silence did not last long.
Tomorrow is your last chance. If you want to save your sister, you must obey me until the end. What does that mean?
When I digested his words, my fear spiked.
By the way, I didn't know you could still perform after all of your toes were chopped off.
And then, the laughter fades away when Mr. Brooks leaves the room. I then quickly stripped off the disgusting mascot and rushed to the bus stop to go home. That was the last time I showed up at Chuck E. Cheese. Mr. Brooks was in jail now, and Zane, the other employee, was nowhere to be found. To be honest, I really hope Zane and his sister are doing well.
My brother saw a ghost as a kid. 10 years later, I realized what he actually saw. So I was about 8 years old. My little brother was about 5. We lived in a fairly sparsely populated area since our dad worked construction out of town back then. It was often just 3 of us at the house for weeks. One summer morning, I went to my brother's room to wake him up for breakfast. That summer was quite hot, so everyone was drenched in sweat. But my brother was still covered with a blanket. Pulling off the blanket, I saw my brother's back was wet. His face was white and sweaty. When I asked him why he was covered in blankets in the middle of summer, he turned grumpy and said, "It's a secret. I can't tell you." To my surprise, I went down to the house to ask my mother, and she said that this situation has lasted for nearly a week now. That night, a hailstorm appeared out of nowhere. Since we were both excited, Mum let us stay up later than usual. It was well past our bedtime when our mum woke up off the couch to put us to bed. My brother and Mum both had a habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I only knew this because I was always a light sleeper, and they just couldn't help flushing with the door wide open. This night, however, my brother stopped on his way to his room and came back towards the bathroom. I'm going to try to pee before I go to bed. The past few nights, I've been too afraid to walk to the bathroom. After a while of asking what scared my brother so much, he finally told me to bend down, then whispered in my ear, "Our house is haunted." Ignoring my cowardly expression, he continued, "That night, I thought it was Dad, so I approached him, but it was a mistake. There was a ghost with wild white eyes and was always dressed in orange. He said he won't harm you and Mum if I promise not to tell anyone. But I broke my promise." I was terrified by it. The fear of seeing a ghost like that at the end of the hallway or through the windows is the reason I started running from the stairs to my bedroom at night. After the summer vacation ended, my brother didn't mention it anymore, and I forgot about it too. Years later, when I was about 18, my mum and I had a conversation while we were on the run. We were sharing stories about Max's tendency towards destroying my shoes and other unruly behaviors when my mum blurted out, "Do you remember that time I opened the front door for the cops and Max ran inside to the kitchen and started tearing open that big bag of dog food we had?" This really caught me by surprise because in all the years I lived in that house, we never once called the cops. I asked her what she was talking about and she looked equally surprised, as if she had just revealed something by accident. "Oh, that's right. I never told you because you were too young at the time." And this is what my mother told me. On the day of the hailstorm when I was 8, my house was broken into by a stranger. That night, she got up at 3 a.m. to go to the toilet. As soon as she came out of the room, my mother suddenly heard a noise in the kitchen. She looked down from the stairs and saw a dim shadow. Mum was extremely scared but still trying to keep her eyes open. Suddenly there was a flash of thunder, lightning through the window, allowed her to see the face of that person. And at the same time, he was startled and looked up the stairs, his eyes meeting hers. Those wild eyes haunted my mum for many years. My mother quickly grabbed the phone and carried my little brother into my room, locked the door, then immediately dialed 911. She couldn't remember all the details she gave them. A tall white man wearing a faded orange suit, something like that. Police said my mother's description matched the description of a man they were looking for in the area. It turns out he had escaped from jail on a murder charge. Now, I know it sounds so obvious hearing those two stories back to back, but it wasn't until last night that I pieced everything together. Both my mother and I, we never knew that my brother had unknowingly warned us about a murderer who spent multiple nights casing our home. What my brother saw was not a ghost or an imaginary figure, but a murderer that stayed in our house for no one knows how long. And since my brother broke his promise, he actually could kill us at any time. Maybe that night, he did plan it. Maybe that sound my mom heard from the kitchen is that he was finding a knife to kill all of us.
Brittany, Valerie, and Allison were a group of close friends who went to play Escape Room Backroom version. In this version, players didn't have to discover clues or solve puzzles to find the exit, but they would experience the levels via VR glasses. Different levels had different frights that the girls had to face to find the way out. After taking 3 pills of cardiotonic from the game instructor, they put on the VR glasses. When Brittany opened her eyes, she found herself in a yellow hallway filled with an annoying musty smell and absolute quiet. Picking up her walkie-talkie, she gave it a try by calling her friends.
Hello? Val? Alice, do you hear me?
Yes. All right, girls, let's rock.
Brittany walked on the deserted hallway. There was nothing but her footsteps. She had passed many turns, but hadn't found anything else along this empty hallway.
Where's the door?
I found a door. Pity girls. I'm winning this game.
Valerie said in the walkie-talkie. Brittany seemed a bit impatient because Allison soon also found the door to the next level while she was still in the same spot in the empty hall. Suddenly, she saw a monster ahead in one corner. Startled and scared, Brittany decided to turn into another cross, which was just an extension of the hallway so far, with boring yellow walls, the musty smell, and the mildew. The walkie-talkie had lost its signal for a while. Now, being totally lost in repeated space, Brittany started to get impatient and fatigued. Brittany was startled and looked around. Still that empty and humid hallway, but there were footsteps echoing, and they became louder and louder. Seemed like a creature was moving faster and faster. The only thing Brittany could do was run away from that thing. But the more she tried to run, the louder the footsteps became. Lonely and terrified, she became more panicked. Finally, she found a door in front. That must be the exit. No time to think, she rushed to it. And at the very moment when she twisted the doorknob, something touched her back. Brittany sat down for relief and then tried to call the others.
Alice! Val? Anyone hear me? Alice! Val!
That was Allison's voice.
Alice? Are you okay?
Allison sharply exhaled. It seemed that she was met with something terrified there.
Free! Val is dead!
Allison bursted into tears. The news squeezed her heart. The walkie-talkie lost signal again.
Alice? Alice!
There was no reply, and Brittany, once again, was left alone. She needed to find Allison. The footsteps echoed in the hallway. Brittany immediately recalled the memory of the monster, so she kept running and running. The moment Brittany looked back, a black shadow ran into her and made her fall to the ground. The feeling of pain ran through her body.
Bree!
Luckily, that was Allison that bumped into her. The two girls were delighted.
Let's get out of here.
Finally, there was a door at the end of the hallway. But before they reached the door, a black shadow ran into Allison and made her fall down.
No!
Brittany screamed when she saw the sight. She couldn't feel her legs anymore, and she just kept shivering in fear. The man in black costume turned into Brittany. Having no time for tears, she rushed to the door. When she opened it, a bright, lighted space swallowed up her whole body. Brittany woke up, panicked, and looked around. There was still the room with the green screen, but the 2 chairs were empty.
Allison? Valerie?
They've gone already.
The game instructor suddenly appeared from the middle of nowhere. Brittany checked her phone.
They didn't wait for me then.
On her way home, she was still scared of what happened. Then she was startled when she found the bloodline on her shoes. The memories of the hallway event. Some weeks relaxing somewhere in the suburbs. This year, I decided to find a place on Craigslist. You know, on Craigslist, you can buy or rent anything. I mean anything. So I found a fully furnished 2-story apartment for $800 a month. After finishing the forms they required, I moved into the accommodation. The owner had opened the door before I arrived. Impressive. I was glad he did that. But then I realized this house was not like I expected. It looked dark and a bit mysterious and smelt like something fishy, which almost made me throw up. When I opened the kitchen window, I saw some blood streaks on the sink. Maybe the owner had not cleaned up after cooking. Oh, that would explain the smell. I sighed and washed them away. The rest of the house was not any better. Every room was so messy and covered in a thin dust layer. I was quite disappointed. No wonder the rent was only $800. I went out into the yard to sit on the swing for a while, and then made a video call to my fiancée, Hazel. While talking with her, I noticed a man standing outside the fence staring at me. "Hi, can I help you?" I smiled politely, but he didn't say anything, just got into the car and drove away.
What's the matter?
Hazel asked. "No problem, just a weird old man." Through the screen, I took Hazel on a tour around the house. I showed her the floor with many colorful rugs, among which there was a rug with the vintage pattern that she loved so much. But it smells bad. Seemed like no one had ever washed it for a century. Maybe tomorrow I'll call the cleaning service. In the evening, I went to prepare dinner. I switched on the light. Nothing happened. However I tried, those lights did not light up. I went to check the main panel only to find that the fuse was burnt black. I felt like I was cheated by the house owner. What the hell is that? I was startled to see the weird old man again, driving slowly along the road and staring at me through the glass doors. And he smiled. "Sir, is there anything I can do for you?" But he disappeared before I got to the door. What's wrong with this guy? I mumbled and went into the house. The next morning, I called an electrician to fix the light system. After an hour, a guy named Nick rang the doorbell. He walked into the house and immediately covered his nose.
"Sir, forgive me if I was rude, but do you smell something like dead rats in this house?"
He asked me. I sniffed and realized that was the smell I found yesterday.
"This looks like a murder scene."
Nick laughed, but immediately stopped when he saw me frowning.
"But I must say the house smells very horrible."
"Yeah, maybe it was from the dirty rugs. I'm gonna have them cleaned now," I said. Then Nick offered to help me take those rugs to the laundromat. While waiting for him to check the electrical system, I went out to the yard to make a phone call.
I'm afraid you may also need to call the rat exterminators,
Nick said while helping me lift the rug to his car. Both of us were dizzy because of its odor.
Oh, what the hell is that?
Nick suddenly said. When we lifted it up to see what was beneath, Nick and I both froze. Underneath the rug was a human-shaped stain, on which were traces of liquid, blood, and something I couldn't even name. There were also blood stains on the floor. I followed the trails of blood and discovered that there was blood underneath all the rugs. Both Nick and I couldn't hold it anymore. We ran out of the house and threw up. After my call, the police quickly came to investigate and got in touch with the homeowner. But his answer took us back.
This isn't my house?
Nick and I looked at each other without saying a word. It turned out that the house next door was the one I rented on Craigslist and should have moved in, not this one. Meanwhile, the house I just spent one night in belonged to the strange old man I met. I couldn't help but tremble when thinking that maybe last night he snuck into the house and tried to kill me. How lucky I was. The door was locked, so he couldn't get in. Finally, I found my first job as a shift employee at Taco Bell. It wasn't a high-paid job, but I appreciated it anyway. I often worked in the morning, but today my boss suddenly asked if I could change to the night shift from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. Working the night shift is paid higher than usual, so I said yes. The store was quite empty at night. There was nothing much to do, so Lizzie and I just took turns to tend the counter. Lizzie was sitting idle in the kitchen and listening to the news on her phone. Recently, a serial killer has been reported to be on the run. Lizzie was interested in the breaking news, and so she always wanted to update the latest ones. I didn't care much about the news, just sat there looking at the heavy rain outside the glass door. This kind of weather made my mood even worse. Under the dim light, a customer wearing a black raincoat opened the door and moved toward the counter.
Welcome to Taco Bell,
I said politely. That man looked at the menu on the table for a long time.
We're very sorry for this inconvenience, but the restaurant is out of power. We only have tacos meal.
Damn it, he whispered, then pointed to the tacos meal menu.
Which flavor would you like, sir?
Then I asked a few more questions, ready to take notes.
What sauce would you like to have?
Whatever.
Do you drink soft drinks?
Yes.
Soda or juice?
Whatever.
Do you want to put in...
He banged on the side table and rushed to grab my neck. His eyes were bloodshot red. Then he yelled at me, "Quit mouthing and bring me food!" I was scared to the point of tears. This was my first time dealing with such a rude customer. In the kitchen, Lizzie heard a loud noise and rushed out. But instead of intervening, Lizzie stood there and stared at him. For a moment, she seemed to be shaking with fear.
The murderer was witnessed to appear in a black raincoat most of the time. The police are tracing his whereabouts at the moment.
Hurry! That man raised his voice again and got off my neck. My knees buckled and I gasped for air after almost suffocating. Lizzie was trembling while preparing food for him. That man paced back and forth in front of the counter as if he was monitoring us. As soon as Lizzie completed the meal and gave it to him, he grabbed it immediately. Taking a crumpled note from his pocket, he threw it on the bar and left. We just stood there full of suspicion and fear. He didn't even pay enough for the meal. After making sure that the man was gone, I breathed a sigh of relief. I went back to the counter, but slipped and fell. Lizzie quickly helped me up, but at that moment, I found my hand was covered by a red liquid. On the freshly cleaned floor, there were patchy red footprints. Lizzie and I looked at each other. We were all in shock. Just then, Lizzie's phone got a new report about a murder in the nearby area. There was no doubt that we just met the serial killer, and even served him food. We stood inside the restaurant, peering outside to see if the man was gone. It was raining heavily, and the man was nowhere to be seen.
We must get out of here,
Lizzie said. I knew Lizzie was trying to be calm, but I could hear her voice shaking. On the outside, it was still raining and freezingly cold. Lizzie was so scared that she dropped the key. I quickly picked it up and locked the front door for her. There was a sudden flash of lightning, and for 1 second we could see clearly our reflection on the glass window. But there were 3 shadows. It was him. He came back. The murderer in the black raincoat came to dispose of us. Before we could run away, he stabbed Lizzie with a sharp knife right in her back. When he pulled the knife out, his face was covered in her blood. Lizzie fell to the ground. I was frozen. That man raised his knife again and turned to look at me. When he was about to swing the knife, Lizzie grasped the blade by her hand, which was bleeding profusely.
Run!
Lizzie struggled for breath. I was too terrified to move an inch. The man snatched the knife. Lizzie was pierced continuously, blood splashing all over the ruthless killer. I ran away in the rain, and the murderer, after pulling the knife from Lizzie's body, quickly chased after me. At that time, my ears were filled up and my eyes could no longer see anything. I kept running in the rain until I saw the light from a car approaching.
What happened?
The driver rolled down the window and asked me.
Help me.
The driver opened the door for me to get in and quickly turned around. I looked in the rearview mirror. That man, who now knew he missed a prey, was standing in the rain. Even though I didn't see him clearly, I could feel his eyes on me.
Karen arrived home at 3 a.m. The weekend business trip drained all of her energy. Even so, Karen still got up early to make breakfast for Anderson, her fiancé. For her, a sandwich and a morning cup of black coffee was a great compensation for the time away from home. As usual, Anderson was dressed in a neat suit and sat cross-legged in an armchair in the center of the living room. He is handsome, reserved, and has his own rules. Reading the morning newspaper was an example. Regardless of weekdays or Sundays, the first thing he does is always reading the newspaper, especially in recent days when there has appeared more and more missing people in the local area. Is anything new? Karen asked, placing the coffee cup in front of Anderson. Police have confirmed all the missing cases are related. They were all young girls found dead in their 23s. My age range, huh? Karen thought, with a shiver. Anderson, still focused on the newspaper, ignoring her expression, he added, "Oh, and all the murderers have something in common. They lost their teeth. How on earth can there be such sick people?" The cases usually happen around 6 to 7 p.m. when everyone is on the way from work. The last victim was found dead on Sunday, the day Karen was on a business trip. Maybe if Karen wasn't away that day, the victim would be her too. Except for the sick murderer, no one knows for sure. Suddenly, the breath on the back of her neck startled her. Anderson had been standing behind her ever since. He hugged her from behind, kissed her cheek, and greeted her at work. All day, Karen couldn't put the images of poor victims out of her mind. She got home at 5 p.m. earlier than usual. Anderson is far from coming. When she got home, Karen went straight to the bathroom. Bubble bath with Epsom salt, for a luxurious evening when it rains all her troubles. But today is the exception. Despite being immersed in the warm water, Karen can't help but wonder, but why teeth? In such a chaotic situation like this, you never know when you would be targeted by the perverted killer. That scared Karen. Fear fluttered in her stomach, but at least she had Anderson, a fiancé who would protect her at any cost. Thinking like that, she calmed down a bit to start enjoying the evening. The steam from the tub rose up, making her vision and everything sink into illusion. Half an hour passed, and Karen noticed something was off today. Karen didn't know why, but she began to feel pain and discomfort all over her body. There's something unusual in the bathtub today. Salt grains. It's been so long since Karen put them in the tub, yet they didn't seem to dissolve at all. Instead, they poked at her, stinging. Karen reached down to the bottom of the tub, picking up a few seeds to look at. Oh my God, a tooth! She panicked, rushed out and flushed the water. Karen felt like she could throw up. All of them are teeth, jagged, covering the tub. Oh no. In her 23 years of life, Karen has never felt so scared. At that moment, she heard the entrance door open. Anderson is back. At this moment, Anderson's face this morning flashed through her mind. While he was reading the newspaper, he smiled. A strange, vicious smile.
I'd say the job was not too hard for me. However, the late-night customers were often not easy to deal with, and I met one on my very first time working the night shift. It was a summer evening. I was walking around the stalls, rearranging the items on the shelves. Suddenly, I saw a suspicious woman. She was wearing a huge travel backpack on her shoulder and looking around surreptitiously. It was odd that she just stood there for 15 minutes without buying anything. I felt rather strange, but didn't dare to question or get in trouble on my first day on duty, so I went to the clothing store and rearranged the items there.
Martha, a customer at the frozen meat counter needs help. Get there now.
That was Jonathan, the store manager, observing my job over the radio.
Copy that.
I said back and quickly moved toward there. Surprisingly, the one who needed assistance was the suspicious woman I met earlier. When she saw me approaching, she suddenly left.
How strange. What exactly is she looking for?
I frowned slightly and thought to myself, anyways, I still followed her. As she approached the knife counter, I decided to stop her.
Madam, what are you looking for?
My sudden question startled the woman. She immediately turned to look at me, giving me a forced smile.
I was looking for bread.
Bread? Hasn't she gone back and forth to the bakery a few times?
Bread is over there, in the dairy section.
I felt odd, but smiled and showed her the direction. Instead of saying thanks, she grimaced and left in anger as if I had just done something very rude. Suddenly, just a few aisles away from where I stood, a high-pitched scream rang out. I hurriedly ran over to find that creepy woman was holding a camp knife and swinging around to scare everyone. She even almost injured a guest.
Jonathan, we're having a problem. Please come over here.
I said over the radio and quickly dialed 911. The woman was still standing there. Her head began to twitch with bloodshot eyes. Her mouth was watering and she was puffing quite hard.
Ma'am, please, put the knife down.
I tried to say in a calm voice, but that woman did not listen. She was still very fierce, her hand firmly grasping the knife.
Ma'am,
I repeated.
Shut up!
The woman shouted, pointing the knife at me. I was so terrified I stepped backward. At that moment, I noticed she kept scratching her neck as she held the knife forward. No one dared to get even one step toward the madwoman.
My baby!
Another woman spoke up. She seemed to be scared to death. The baby carriage was only 2 meters away from the crazy woman. Everyone was so petrified. But then the most unexpected thing happened. The baby in the carriage began to cry intensely.
Shut up! Shut up!
The creepy woman clutched her head and screamed. Then she turned around to see where the crying was coming from. The knife stuck down the item on the counter. Fortunately, Jonathan was able to rush out to push the carriage away and avoid the blade. The woman still seemed angry. She stared at Jonathan with bloodshot eyes.
The police are coming!
I shouted. The woman turned to look at me. As soon as I said that, I trembled in fear and stepped back. The woman with a creepy smile walked towards me. My whole body stiffened, and I couldn't move.
Police here. Put down your weapons.
The police officer promptly appeared and shouted. The woman stopped and raised her head. She was still breathing heavily, looking madly at the police officer.
Put the knife down,
he repeated. The woman remained silent. Her eyes turned to look at me. I was so scared that she would aim it at me.
I said, put the knife down.
The officer said it again. I could see how hard he was trying to stay calm. The insane woman appeared defiant, clutching the knife firmly in her hand. She rushed towards me while raising the knife above her head. The woman fell to the ground, her whole body convulsing, her eyes widening from the electric shock. The officer quickly ran over with the help of several other guests, handcuffing her. I sat on the ground to stare at the madwoman who was taken away. My heart was pounding violently in my chest. After that unpleasant encounter, I became more alert. Whenever I saw a woman with a backpack on her back, the memories of that horrible night just flooded back again.
The weather was terrible yesterday.
Yeah.
Since there was a construction site near Dunkin' Donuts, we lost a lot of loyal customers. It meant less work for John and me. I had nothing to complain about my job until one day. We were about to close the stall when a guest walked in. It was so hot outside, but he still wore a hoodie and his hair covered most of his face. So weird.
Welcome to Dunkin' Donuts.
The guest walked in, but the way he walked was abnormal. He walked along the wall to a table in the corner. It was like his back was glued to it.
Who's that freak?
John said as he didn't welcome this customer. I, on the opposite, thought this was just a rueful man, so I brought him the menu. As I came closer, I found this man was not as old as I thought.
2 vegan chocolate rainbow and 1 strawberry red, please.
The thing was, whatever he did, he fixed his head and back in one position, not to move an inch, like a pre-programmed robot. Then I was told that his name was Edward and he lived nearby. Perhaps because of his timid personality, he had never entered a store or restaurant. The more I got to know him, the more I found out that he and I had a lot in common. But John didn't like this guy at all.
Freak!
Many times, John deliberately spoke loudly for Edward to hear those words. One night, John had to serve Edward.
What did you say?
Suddenly, I heard him shout, then rushed to the guest like a wild animal. Edward was panicking and shaking his head. He didn't know what to do.
Hey, stop it!
I hurriedly approached.
He called me bastard,
John said in anger. But that sounds strange. Edward was one of the most polite people I had ever met. Seeing John's aggressive actions, Edward quickly left without saying any words.
Why do you keep protecting him?
Since that incident, John no longer disparaged Edward, but still expressed his displeasure. He once asked me,
Aren't you curious why that guy always walks like that?
Frankly, I was really curious but too shy to ask. So John told me his plan to know about the secret. That night, Edward came to Dunkin' Donuts as usual, and he even lent me a book. Before he sat down, I said,
I got off work early today. Would you wait for me a little bit and walk with me home?
Edward seemed so surprised after my information that he dropped the book on the ground. I quickly bent over to help him pick up the book, and I heard him say,
"You stupid bimbo."
I looked at Edward in surprise, and he hurriedly waved his hand and said,
No, I didn't mean it.
But right on the spot, a slap made me fall to the ground. John jumped out of nowhere and punched Edward in the face. While John lifted me up, I heard Edward scream like crazy. He frantically tried to cover his head with his hands and stepped back against the wall. John violently grabbed Edward and yelled at his face.
Stop it, you freak! What do you want?
No! I didn't mean it! Please!
Edward was about to cry.
You'd better...
Before John finished his words, his hands were grabbed and squeezed by Edward. I even heard the sound of bones cracking. Then John was thrown aside. He rolled on the ground in pain with his arm disfigured. I heard Edward spew out a dozen curses, but his mouth didn't move. For a moment, I saw Edward's back turned. Behind his head, a wrinkled face, cruel and monstrously ugly.
You rat!
That creature growled and walked toward me. Edward's tall body was now strangely contorted. Just as the monster was about to catch me, I resisted fiercely. I slammed the thick book into his face and made it fall to the ground with a high-pitched hiss. At that moment, I heard Edward's voice.
Riley! Run!
I was so scared and ran out of the restaurant. When the police arrived, Edward was no longer there, and John was taken to the emergency room immediately. I later found out that Edward had suffered from a rare parasitic twin. That was why he had a strange creature behind his head. I quit the job at Dunkin' Donuts after that. Even though my life has returned to normal, I still think about Edward from time to time. I wonder where he is and what he's doing. I hope he can get rid of that monster to live a free life just as I am.
For the coffee junkies. It's all about my cousin Wild, who announced that he loved coffee more than anything else in this world, especially Starbucks. He said that 2 cups of coffee a day is a must, or else he can't stand the entire day. I thought that it would be fine at first, until one day, Wild became out of control. That day, I went to Starbucks for an espresso before going to work. There was a long line of people already, so I had no choice but to wait. Well, it looked like everyone was tired on Monday morning. I could tell that based on their grumpy faces. When it was my turn, I asked for an espresso, but before I pulled out my wallet, someone crashed into me so hard I almost fell. It was Wild, my cousin. After not seeing him for a long time, I didn't expect such an awkward encounter.
Hey! Where's my coffee?
Wild raised his voice. Sir, please wait a moment. A Starbucks employee named Bruce replied gently.
Bring it to me! Right now!
I was quite surprised to see him acting like that. Wild used to be so gentle and a kind man. This was the first time I had seen him so angry. At this point, Wild totally lost his patience, slamming the table, then grabbing the employee's collar. Bruce looked so confused as Wild insisted that his order was ignored. Shelby, the store manager who was notified of the incident, rushed to the counter.
Sir, may I know your concerns?
Wild pointed at Bruce's face and said to the manager,
This stupid dude forgot my order!
Bruce shook his head and looked at Shelby. Shelby gently asked Wild,
Sir, what did you order?
Go and ask your silly staff!
Wild yelled. Bruce pulled Shelby to a corner. This man has finished the 7th cup. That's too much.
Give me the coffee!
Wild still screamed.
Sir, please calm down. It seems to be a misunderstanding here. Could I invite you into my office?
Shelby politely walked over to the guest.
No, just bring my drink here, right now!
Everything got worse when Wild refused to leave and the customers in line started to get impatient.
Hey, Wild, stop it!
I murmured, but he didn't seem to recognize me at all, which was so weird. At that time, another guy in Starbucks uniform walked out with my order. I was about to get the drink, but Wild was faster. He grabbed the hot cup and shoved it in Bruce's face. Bruce screamed in pain, clutching his face, which was now burned by the heat of the coffee. Oh my God! The espresso I ordered was extremely hot. Everyone was shocked. After doing that horrible thing, Wild stood panting with an empty cup in his hand. The manager immediately called 911 while others helped Bruce with first aid. Wild was still angry and kept glaring at Bruce with hatred.
That stupid rat forgot my order!
Wild returned to his seat after I dissuaded him, but his displeasure was still evident on his face. Bruce's burns were severe, Shelby allowed him to skip the shift to see the doctor. In the end, Shelby had to offer to compensate Wild. Even so, he still grudgingly took the cup and went back to his seat. The coffee cups were brought out to Wild one by one. He drank each cup in a single gulp, but that wasn't enough.
Bring me more! More!
His eyes quickly turned bloodshot, and he growled at Shelby. No one dared to stop him because he was still holding the porcelain cup in his hand.
More! More! More!
He just laughed and yelled. He kept drinking until they brought him the 10th cup. It didn't matter if it was iced or hot coffee. He just chugged the whole cup right away. It seemed he had lost all taste and sensation.
I want more coffee! I want more coffee!
He laughed as he grabbed Shelby, shoving the entire cup of coffee into her mouth. Even though the cup choked her, he still tried to force Shelby to swallow it. She would be suffocated by his damn actions.
Coffee! Coffee!
Wild had gone totally insane.
Wild, stop it!
I was terrified, rushing to stop him, but he just pushed me away. At this moment, the police promptly appeared to intervene.
Coffee!
Even when he got caught, he didn't stop screaming. Wild was taken to the hospital for neurological treatment soon after. The Starbucks store also banned him. Bruce quit his job because of the shock, and I haven't seen him ever since. 1 week later, Wild's condition was improved, and after hearing what happened, Wild didn't recognize himself anymore. As for me, after that incident, I switched to drinking tea instead of coffee, especially chai tea. Little Caesars was my favorite pizzeria. Not only did they have the best pizzas, but it was also Sasha's workplace. To me, she was the greatest chef, and she made the best pizzas in the world. That day, I went to Little Caesars as usual. After ordering, I sat in my favorite seat. From this view, I could see Sasha step out sometimes. She looked so beautiful in Little Caesar's uniform with an apron. When the waiter brought the pizza out, I imagined it was Sasha. She was getting closer and now serving me the food.
Do you need anything else?
The waitress's voice woke me up. I shook my head and stared at the meal. While swallowing each bite with pleasure, I thought about the presents I gave her, wondering if she liked them or not. I sat at Little Caesars for a few hours, and before leaving, I left a note for Sasha. I wanted to wait outside until her shift ended. I stayed across the street and looked at the pictures of her. Whatever she did, she was so adorable. Even when she was sleeping, eating, walking, or making pizzas, she looked so gorgeous. Oh, there she was. For your information, I had a small gift for her and was dying to see her reaction. After a few steps, Sasha turned her head back. I hid behind the wall, trying not to let her find me. Then Sasha suddenly walked faster, so I had to speed up to keep up with her. Sasha? I suddenly appeared, touching her back. She screamed and ran away. I thought maybe she ran into some trouble, so I chased after her. I kept running and running. But ended up losing track of her. The next day, I went back to Little Caesars, sat in my favorite seat, and ordered my favorite pizza. Sasha was nowhere to be seen, but I assumed she was in the kitchen.
You're eating too much.
Disgusting! Are you starving?
I heard the other guests whispering something, but I didn't care much. Sasha made those pizzas for me, just me. So of course I would eat all of them. But the taste today was weird and not as good as usual. Especially because I could feel something inside my mouth that no matter how hard I chewed, it wouldn't go away. I tried to swallow it, but it stuck in my throat. Something in the food made me throw up. I heard a woman scream.
What the heck?
That's disgusting.
A few more people knocked over their chairs. It seemed that they were very angry. I pulled the thing out of my throat. It was a bunch of hair. I was so scared and confused, I didn't know what to do.
Ugh, that jerk just threw up. So disgusting.
A guest spoke up as the staff approached. Everything was so chaotic that I couldn't do anything but rush away. After the incident, I didn't have any courage to go into that place again, but waited for Sasha from the other side of the road. She finally finished her shift. I quietly followed her without making any noise.
I just put a little hair in the pizza and it worked.
Sasha was laughing with someone on the phone.
He probably wouldn't dare to come anymore. What a freak.
I heard all these words and it broke my heart into pieces. How could she do this to me? I didn't believe this. I had to ask her. Sasha, why? Sasha! I immediately rushed towards her.
Ew! Ah! Pervert!
Sasha screamed when I touched her shoulder.
Stay away from me! Leave me alone! Ah!
She screamed too loudly, so I covered her mouth, but she resisted and thrashed violently. Shh! Behave! Behave, my little angel. I pushed my hand tighter and whispered into her ears. But she wouldn't stop panicking. Nothing to be scared of, Sasha. I had to hug her and comfort her. Behave. Sasha was no longer struggling. She behaved now. I hugged her in my arms. Gosh, her hair smelled so good. Her body had the smell of my favorite pizza. I couldn't stop inhaling the scent of her hair and skin. From now on, Sasha would always be by my side and enjoy Little Caesar's pizza with me. No more heartbreak, no more fear. Just you and me. The Mayhem Amusement Park had a scary rumor that the Mayhem roller coaster tracks would take you to a mysterious area where you would be stuck forever. That rumor began to spread after many people went missing while riding the roller coaster. This park had to close after only 2 years of operation and became a deserted place. But that was 10 years ago. This summer, the Mayhem Mountain roller coaster would reopen to guests. As true risk-takers, Chris and Joanna couldn't miss this tour to examine the rumor. After 10 years abandoned, everything here was quite old and dilapidated, and the tracks looked a bit ramshackle. Even though it was reopened, it still looked eerily deserted. Hi. Wanna ride a roller coaster? He had makeup on like a clown with a red nose. He looked so sloppy in that staff uniform.
I'm sure.
Joanna hesitated a bit, even though that was exactly their main purpose when getting there.
Of course, but I have to gather a few more passengers. Can you wait a few minutes? This ride may start later than usual.
How late?
Joanna asked.
About 12 a.m. But don't worry, a roller coaster ride only lasts for 15 minutes.
The clown replied. He seemed very impatient. Joanna looked at Chris, and they both agreed.
All right, just a few minutes waiting.
And then they sat down to wait. But after a while, there were no more guests, and the clown wasn't around.
All right, a little bit less passengers than usual, but enough for today.
The man finally came back. Joanna and Chris looked at each other confused. But the good thing was they didn't have to wait for another day to explore the ride. The clown quickly led them up the stairs and seated them carefully.
Remember to fasten your seatbelt and do not scream,
the clown repeatedly told them.
Don't scream? What a freak,
Chris mumbled. Joanna didn't notice her friend's words because what bothered her more was the clown's weird glance at them, and his hands were scratching each other, harder and harder. Soon after the two people got on the roller coaster, the seatbelts tightened around them stably. Joanna and Chris looked at each other, and before they could say anything, the roller coaster moved. A feeling of euphoria made Joanna shiver. The roller coaster raced at full speed through each rotation, and fortunately, Joanna was able to suppress her screams. As for Chris, he was extremely excited and shouted at the top of his lungs. One round, then two, and three. They soon became dizzy. The train still raced like a beast, ripping through the fog. At this point, Joanna began to notice something strange. Joanna tried to open her eyes to see the clown in the control booth, but there was no one there. She panicked, and Chris also noticed this strange thing. He kept screaming in the hope that someone would hear his cry for help. The roller coaster kept running while they became more and more exhausted. Then, all of a sudden, the glider's screws became loose and began to screw backward. Joanna and Chris grabbed all the nails that fell out from the vehicle. The roller coaster kept accelerating as if it would never stop. At that moment, Joanna saw a familiar figure standing below. And as the roller coaster pulled her closer to that side, Joanna realized in horror it was the clown. He was smiling devilishly. His mouth was wide open with those lifeless eye sockets. He was enjoying their suffering. The vehicle began to wobble more than ever, and they could no longer hold it back. It continued to roll over. Chris's screams tore up the still air. The seatbelt popped out. Joanna and Chris almost fell out, but they still managed to hold on the tramp. Chris's whole body was floating in the air. His hand started to slip away, but he still didn't want to cling to Joanna. Joanna couldn't take it anymore. The roller coaster moved to the final station and began to slow to a stop, and she didn't have the strength to do anything else. At this moment, the clown walked up to Joanna. Next to him were 3 fierce dogs. Joanna could clearly see drools running down their sharp teeth.
When I was a kid, I used to love playing games, especially Minecraft. I never knew that one day Minecraft would ruin my entire life. This story happened 10 years ago, when I was only 15. No, it must be him! It must be him! It must be him! My brother is the one who brought Minecraft to my life, and since we were extremely close, he left his PC at home after moving to college. That night, my parents went to visit my grandmother, so I stayed home alone and played Minecraft with my two best friends, Kai and Evan. Evan and Kai were inviting me to play survival mode. That's strange. I don't want to play this mode because joining unknown servers holds its own risk. But in the end, I joined them anyway. A few minutes later, Kai sent me the link. I clicked in immediately and was led to a large room with 10 other gamers. Oh, Kai and Evan are here. For some reason, I felt relieved when I saw my friends. The game began, and we spread out in different directions. I started building a shelter while Kai and Devin gathered stones for a furnace. Everyone was doing their gameplay except one player. This guy named his character First Creeper, and he didn't do anything. He just stood like a statue right next to me and just followed me around. When I moved, he moved. When I stopped, he stopped. Who the hell is this? I was feeling irritated, so I asked in the chat box, "Guys, who is the First Creeper? That freak just follows me without doing anything. Must be some pathetic guy, I guess."
I don't give a shit. Just get back to the game.
I didn't know if that guy could read it, but when I went back to the game screen, First Creeper disappeared. We played Minecraft for hours. When the clock struck 12, it was already dark in Minecraft. Evan was nowhere to be seen, and Kai hid in the shelter while I drifted apart to collect wood. 5 minutes passed. I started to run in the direction of the shelter because I was scared of the zombies. I kept running, but strangely enough, I couldn't find the shelter. Am I lost? So I texted in the chat, "Kai, Evan, you there?" But no one answered, so I texted them again. "Did you guys leave me alone?" A new message popped up, but instead of Kai or Evan, that First Creeper guy replied, "You're not alone." I shivered and checked at the game screen immediately, but still found myself standing alone. So I went back to the chat. Only then did I find out that everyone was either dead or out of the game, except for the three of us and this First Creeper guy. "Kai? Evan? I know you guys are around. Answer me!" Still, my friends didn't reply. "Don't search for them. It's useless. I've already killed them all." I thought this was a joke because apparently Kai and Devin were still alive. Just right then, I noticed on the chat box to see Kai died, then Evan. See? And now, I just need to kill you, and the game will be over. At this point, I got so frustrated that I couldn't ignore this guy. "Then where the hell are you, First Creeper?" And he said, "I'm after you." Believe it or not, his answer gave me goosebumps. My heart rate increased, so I turned back to check. The room was empty. There's no one but my cat lying on the bed licking her fur. I called Kai and Devin but got no answer. I didn't wait to listen to this crazy guy, so I quit the game. Phew, what a freak. I went to bed and called it a day. About an hour later, I was woken up by the buzzing phone. "Hello?" It was my brother. He almost shouted into the phone. "Are you at home?" I lazily replied, "Yeah, where else can I go at this hour?" For some unknown reason, he was silent for a moment. Then he said in a shaky voice, "Then why did the alarm go off?" "There's no sound of the alarm going off. What are you saying?" Then he paused as if to reassure me, saying, "You need to hide. I just got notified. Someone broke into our house." I was in a complete state of panic. God, is that the First Creeper name from earlier? How could he find my address? Did he track my IP? Did he come here to kill me to win the game? At that moment, I could hear heavy footsteps rushing towards the door of my room. I sprung out of bed. In my room, there's nowhere to hide. I frantically dialed 911. I could hear someone pass through the toilet, my parents' room, and stop in front of my door. With no other choice, I grabbed my baseball bat and hid behind the door. Please don't come in. Please don't come in. Please don't come in. I stood there and prayed, but then the door burst open. I held my breath and stood as still as a statue. Whoever he was, he just stood there for a while. Apparently seeing no one, he slowly closed the door. But suddenly, my cat made a sound and pointed her head to where I was hiding. This is it. I can feel the door opening again. And he slowly poked his head inside. Just a little more. A little more. God, his head is so green. It's the first creeper guy in Minecraft. Ah! Like an animal, I grabbed the baseball bat and hit him on the head with all my might. I don't remember how many times I hit him, but I saw that guy fall down. Blood was flowing from his body, splattering everywhere. Huff, ha, huff, ha, ha! I'm the winner! It took me a while to calm down, but God, that guy didn't seem to be the first creeper. He looked more like a person wearing casual clothes, but wearing the mask of the character. I peeled off the mask off the first creeper. Lying in the middle of a pool of blood was an 18-year-old young man, glaring his dead eyes at me. Half his head was almost crushed. Brother?
It's almost 11 o'clock. Hopefully they're still open.
Marble said to herself. She was on her way home when the hunger pain came. She stopped by Burger King's drive-thru to buy some food. When she pulled up to the order machine, there was no staff's welcome.
Why is it so quiet in there?
Thinking a while, she raised her voice.
Hello? Is there anybody there? I'd like to get some food.
The order board lit up, but still no response.
Hello? Can you hear me? Looks like I have to go inside to order.
She drove to the pickup counter, inside of which was an employee dressed in a Burger King mascot. He was doing something in the kitchen.
Hey you, I placed an order earlier in the drive-thru line, but no one was there, so I came inside.
Hearing her voice, the man turned around and stared at her face. His eyes were bloodshot. His face was white. He was holding a piece of fresh meat, trying to spread an industrial smile. He said,
"Hello, how can I help you?"
He raised his hand to adjust the paper crown on his head. Marble was too hangry to care about this man's scary look. She immediately said,
Can I order here?
Sure, of course.
Okay, can I have a regular hamburger and a strawberry shake?
Got it. It'll just be a few minutes.
15 minutes had passed. Marble was still in the car waiting.
What's wrong with this place?
She rolled down the window and called inside.
Hey! Why is it taking so long? I've been waiting for 15 minutes!
Only silence.
Fair enough. Let's go in there to see where my food is.
Marble drove to the parking lot and entered the store. The store was unusually quiet. Suddenly, she heard rustling just above her head. She looked up to the ceiling and saw that somebody was crawling in a plastic pipe.
Hey! Who's up there?
That figure suddenly stopped.
I know someone's up there!
The shadow continued to crawl until the end of the pipe, then stuck its head out. It was a man in a Burger King uniform. Before Marble could say anything, the man raised a shushing finger, telling Marble to be silent. Then he whispered, "You should get out of here." Marble still didn't understand what was going on. She angrily said,
What a bunch of nonsense!
Then she walked over to the counter and peeked into the kitchen to see the mascot guy doing something. Marble loudly called out,
Hey, Hey, you! What's wrong with this place?
Hearing Marble's voice, the man immediately turned around and stared at her.
Oh, it's you!
Yes, it's me. Where's my food?
With that industrial smile again, he walked towards the cash register slowly.
Are you hungry?
Yes! Ugh, I'm starving! Bring me my food!
Just a second.
He turned around, walked into the kitchen, and grabbed a hamburger with his hand.
Here you go. A regular hamburger, right?
Marble suddenly trembled when she saw the hamburger in his hand. It was not an ordinary burger. Between the two buns was a human hand still bleeding. At this moment, Marble suddenly remembered the employee crawling in the pipe earlier. She turned her shaking head to look at the pipe in the ceiling. Just then, the Burger King man yanked her by the hair and smashed her head against the cash register.
Where are you looking? Aren't you going to take the burger?
Marble cried and begged.
Please! Please! Let me go!
Eat your burger!
While he spoke, the crazy Burger King man stuffed the burger into her mouth. Marble tried to resist, but the guy laughed and forced her to eat the human hand burger.
Help! Please, help!
Marble pleaded for help from the man inside of the pipe, but got no answer.
No one can help you. No one! Now eat your hamburger! Now eat your hamburger!
She had no more strength to resist and soon fainted. He grabbed her by the hand and dragged her into the kitchen. At this time, the other man looked down from the pipe and desperately said, "I'm sorry." Marble burst into tears and passed out. The next morning, the police received the report from Marble's family. They went to Burger King only to find 2 victims dead in a state of disfigurement, including Marble. Some of her body parts were scattered in the oven, and some were found in a blender. According to the employee in the pipe, the murderer killed the original employee wearing the mascot, then put on that suit himself, entered the staff area, and massacred the employees on that shift. Since then, no matter how hard the police tried, they never captured that Burger King murderer. But someone said that they could see a figure, a Burger King mascot, walking around at 11 o'clock at night.
Being a student in a big city is so difficult. After all, I decided to move to a remote rural area. To earn money, I applied for a job at Wendy's. The interview was smooth. The job didn't require much since there weren't many people in the area. While taking me around the restaurant, Mr. Royce, the manager, suddenly said, one more thing. Do not ever come near the kitchen. I acknowledged that at the fast food restaurant, the kitchen was where they keep the secret recipe, so I totally agreed. Beside Mr. Royce, there was an employee named Lynn and a chef that I barely knew his name. Lynn wore the uniform, makeup, and a wig that looked just like Wendy. We didn't talk much. Lynn was odd. She often looked around and didn't make any sound. Moreover, the next day, after bringing food for the customer, she threw up right there on her feet. And she was slapped right at the spot by the manager. The next afternoon, I went to work late. When I came in, Lynn was leaning out, peeping at the room inside. Isn't that the kitchen? I thought. Lynn, what are you doing? She was startled as she heard my voice. Stained cups and bowls on her hands were dropped, making a loud sound. Jesus, are you okay? I felt so bad that I ran to her to help. But strangely, Lynn was so frightened that she couldn't control her body. She was shaking like she had a seizure. Then I pointed somewhere. I turned around and saw Mr. Royce. Hi, boss. Lynn doesn't seem so well, so I'm gonna help her clean up right now. Yet the manager got mad. He held her hair and shouted, "This fat rat! How dare you!" Lynn was shaking even worse. Her body was shivering, foaming at her mouth.
No, no, no!
As a witness, I didn't know what to do. At that moment, Royce turned to me and said, "You are late today, so your salary will be deducted." After that, I was sent home. The day after, I went to work but didn't see Lynn. Instead, Mr. Royce was working. And days after that, Lynn was nowhere to be seen. So I thought she was fired. It was a Saturday night. I finished my shift at 11 p.m. There was no one in Wendy's store. I guessed Royce and the chef were in the kitchen. When I was about to lock the door, I couldn't find my key. Jesus, Royce is not gonna go easy on me. There was no choice for me. I had to come into the kitchen for the spare key. Mr. Royce? How strange. The kitchen was empty. There was only a boiling bone broth on the stove. I came in and found a half-opened door at the corner. Curiosity got the better of me, so I stepped in. Jesus, in front of me there was a stair to the basement. I had no idea that Wendy's had such a basement, I uttered. Then I followed the dark stairs and tried to step as gently as I could. When there were a few steps left, I started hearing people talking. "Boss, the meat is so fat lately." It was the voice of the chef. Then Royce said, "Resources are rare these days, so stop complaining." It turned out to be a slaughter place. Right at that moment, the sound of a knife cutting hard on the table resounded, causing the floor to shake. The pig must be very big, which cost the chef so much strength, I thought. Then I felt something roll to my feet. Squinting to see clearly, I picked it up and found it was an eyeball with blood on it. That's horrible. I suddenly stepped back and accidentally made a sound. "Who's that?" It was Royce's voice. "I'll check it." Then the chef's. I was freaked out. I tried to find a place to hide. As I turned around, I luckily found cold storage of meat. I quickly came in. In the dark, I felt relief because these messes might be a good place to hide. So I ducked into a corner when I heard the chef's footsteps getting closer and closer. I held my breath and waited. The place where I hid was extremely cramped. There was meat hanging above and below. Boo! I was startled and sat down on the floor. My hand touched the meat and it felt so sticky. That was when I realized that the things around me weren't meat, but looked like human bodies. Gosh, I was not a stranger, but Lynn. Oh no, it was her upper part. The lower part was cut down as the blood dried, and she was all cold. I tried not to scream. I just sat there, next to Lynn's dead body, until I could no longer hear the chef's steps. Because it was too cold, I crawled out. When I thought I would reach the door, suddenly I was blocked by a huge body. Gotcha! Right at that moment, all the lights turned on. The chef with the knife in his hand, standing right in front of me. I could see around by the light in the room. There was not only pork, but there were also human corpses hanging around. The chef slowly raised his knife and prepared to slash it. As everything got blurred, I fainted away. I didn't know how long, but when I woke up, I felt like I was flying. My feet didn't touch the ground, and my whole body ached. At that moment, Mr. Royce and the chef appeared. That's when I realized I was being hung up, but I couldn't scream anymore because I lost all feeling from the cold.